in contact with families of political prisoners with my mom, so I'm highly likely know what is now there. It changed. So I was like living another, even like during these 3 years, country changed. So it's a difficult question. It always will be a life without like part of the heart. Many people, like many Ukrainians, don't physically have home because that was bombed, or people from occupied territories who ran away.
Thank you for listening to The Interview from the BBC World Service. You'll find more in-depth conversations on The Interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts, including episodes with author Sir Salman Rushdie, former US Vice President Kamala Harris, and education activist Malala Yousafzai. Until next time, bye for now.
From the BBC, that was The Interview. I'm Saroja.
Maligayang Biyernes, happy Friday, Manitoba, and Grey Cup weekend here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, everywhere on the app and on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Thanks very much for welcoming us into your morning commute. No, morning routine. That's the word I'm looking for. Lots to come here on the program. I am in for Marcy Marcusa. We'll get into that in a moment. First, though, Josh Crabb joining us with a look at your news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. The city's budget for next year will be presented this afternoon. Winnipeg plans to raise property taxes by 3.5% in 2026. Mayor Scott Gillingham says the property tax hike will return to the rate it was in 2023 and 2024, his first 2 budget years as mayor. A Winnipeg researcher thinks a ticket-fixing case involving Winnipeg police hints at a broader culture issue within the force. University of Winnipeg criminal justice professor Kevin Walby echoed a U of M law professor who last week said there should be a public inquiry. And a Winnipeg Blue Bomber took home some hardware at last night's CFL Awards. Trey Vavel is the league's top special teams player and the CFL's outstanding rookie. Your next local CBC News is at 6:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Josh Crabb from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Speaking of the Grey Cup, we are in our 7 o'clock half hour of the program going to hear from a survivor of sexual exploitation who says large public events like the Grey Cup can be trouble. And while she wants you to watch the Grey Cup, she also wants you to keep a close watch on the people around you. We'll have that story coming up at 7:10 here on the program. Also, the lights were dimmed a few years ago, but now the performing arts scene in Winnipeg says they're bouncing back after the pandemic. We'll hear from the Manitoba Opera Company about their recovery coming up at 7:40 on the program. In our first half hour, though, corpses, bullets, and spies in space. Oh, those are all addressed in Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield's new book, Final Orbit. And he spoke with the CBC's Brittany Greenslade ahead of his Manitoba book tour. That's first up here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Snowfall warning in effect for Churchill today. Snow at times heavy. As the morning progresses, we'll hear a full look at your forecast in Winnipeg. Partly cloudy and 5 degrees here in the downtown. More coming up here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Stay tuned.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger in for Tom Power. In a special episode of Q, you're going to hear Tom in conversation with Mark Critch, Deantha Edmonds, Alan Doyle.
A kid asked me at a gig, I said, how many concerts have you done in your lifetime? And I said, buddy, I don't know.
And many others recorded live in front of an audience in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. CBC Marketplace is on the hunt for the worst commute in the country. It's been gathering data and doing analysis, and the primary finding, which may not surprise you if you're listening in the car right now, is this. Daily rush hour commutes all across this country are getting longer. Marketplace host Chris Glover has the details.
Ontario's Highway 401 routinely comes to a halt during Michaela Helliwell's 2-hour commute.
We're stopped. All right, so you can have a stretch now, hands off the wheel.
She and hundreds of others responded to a marketplace call-out, arguing they have Canada's worst commute.
The worst commute has got to be in Edmonton.
Research analyzed by Marketplace shows commutes across the country are getting longer, especially in Montreal, Vancouver, and Toronto, due to construction, population growth, and lack of capacity. Data shows congestion in those cities is up to 5% worse now compared to 2019.
It's inevitable. It has to come.
Civil engineer Beher Abdulhai says adding a fee to key routes would reduce demand during peak hours.
Congestion pricing is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
In January, congestion pricing was set up in New York City.
That's why drivers have suddenly become supporters of congestion pricing.
Jano Lieber runs the program and says on average traffic is moving 20 minutes faster. But in Canada, provincial governments must approve new highway charges. Ontario's Transport Minister Pravmeet Sarkaria says no.
It's something that we just absolutely fundamentally disagree with.
Beyond adding a congestion price, in the past few years, premiers in Ontario, Nova Scotia, and British Columbia removed tolls. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
And that marketplace investigation airs on CBC TV and CBC Gem tonight at 8:30 in Newfoundland. Well, if you're trying to keep track of Prime Minister Mark Carney's vision for Canada, here's where we stand. Yesterday, Carney put his support behind 3 mines, an LNG project, a hydroelectric project, a transmission line, and a potential mineral corridor. That's in addition to the 2 mines, a port project, nuclear project, and another LNG project he put on the list last month. They're all being referred to the Major Projects Office for consideration. So, what happens next? Let's ask Janice McGregor in our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, there has been some confusion about what a referral to the Major Projects Office actually means.
Yeah, leaps were being made yesterday. I saw an environmental group put out a press release, for example, incorrectly stating that the Silism's proposal had been designated as a project of national interest. Premier Susan Holt was also talking about the tungsten mine in New Brunswick being of national interest. But in fact, the Prime Minister's office confirmed that none of the referrals to the Major Projects Office so far amount to an official declaration that would trigger the stronger, some would say more draconian powers to push through a project that the Carney government passed into law last June. In BC yesterday, reporters were pushing the Prime Minister about the choice to prioritize a natural gas pipeline that's still facing legal challenges from some of the Indigenous peoples along its route.
We work in concert with all parties and we make things possible. We don't dictate where projects are going to go in the end. Parties decide.
The CEO of Northern Ontario's Crawford Nickel project said just getting this referral could help attract international investors. But he also said his project may never be declared as being of national interest. It may be enough just to be prioritized to the front of the line in the approval process. But Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was pointing out that these referrals haven't actually sped anything up yet. They've just added another step to the process, with the Prime Minister shown up to take credit for things that were going to happen anyway.
Janice, last week's budget promised billions for priority projects. So what have we heard so far about funding for these latest projects?
Yeah, only one of the specific referrals yesterday came with funding, a $140 million loan from the Canada Infrastructure Bank for BC Hydro's North Coast transmission line. That's relatively small ball from a government that said it was going to step up to the plate with billions.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
The typhoon activity in the past week is serving as a stark reminder of the stakes at the COP30 summit in Brazil. New analysis is revealing how some of those storms in Asia have been made worse by climate change. International climate correspondent Susan Ormiston has the details.
As delegates to COP30 work through week 1 of the climate talks, vicious storms were the soundtrack. A new study out today confirms that climate change charged the wind speed and ramped up the rainfall in recent deadly typhoons in the Philippines and Vietnam. Analysis by Imperial College London said economic damages were 42% higher in the Philippines and 9% in Vietnam as a result of emissions from burning oil, gas, and coal. With that backdrop, developing countries are looking for signals. Who's going to help pay for poorer countries to adapt, especially with the U.S. on the sidelines.
The call is for that funding to be tripled.
Jennifer Morgan was a special envoy for Germany, now a fellow at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy.
So that will be a very important issue here. How are you going to fund that for the poorest, most indebted nations?
That, as governments tighten the strings on the climate purse, and in Belen, strong response to Prime Minister Carney's announcement of mines and LNG growth. Liz McDowell is with a group called Stand Earth.
You know, what we're seeing, together with 4 other LNG projects, if we keep expanding oil and gas like this, we have no hope at meeting our emissions targets.
COP30 rolls into intense negotiations next week, trying to strengthen a promise made 2 years ago in Dubai to transition away from oil and gas. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Belen.
The mining giant BHP Group is found liable for Brazil's worst environmental disaster. A judge in the UK has ruled the Anglo-Australian company is responsible for a dam collapse 10 years ago. 19 people were killed when toxic waste spilled into a major river, devastating villages downstream. BHP did not own the tailings dam, but the judge says its negligence led to the collapse and the risk was foreseeable. Another phase of the trial will determine damages. Claimants are seeking close to $50 billion in compensation. A stunning surge in the price of baby formula in Canada is forcing desperate parents and caregivers to ask strangers online for help. Statistics Canada finds the average cost of essential infant formula has climbed more than 80% since 2017. The CBC's Jessica Pope has more.
6-month-old Charlotte is still exclusively formula fed. Her mother, Cassandra Shedden, in Thunder Bay in northwestern Ontario, says it costs up to $120 a week to keep her bottle full. And formula prices are straining her already razor-thin budget.
Sometimes you're trying to choose between bills and feeding your kids.
Lisa Irulo helps to run a Facebook group called Everything Free Thunder Bay. She says she is getting direct messages from strangers for help and has sent emergency overnight loans to desperate mothers.
Formula requests are on the rise for sure.
Leslie Frank has been tracking the issue nationally for nearly 2 decades. She is the Canada Research Chair in Food, Health and Social Justice at Acadia University in Nova Scotia. Frank says these social media groups are seeing requests for baby formula across the country.
Foraging for formula online and making pleas of desperation.
Frank says her national research paints a dire picture, with some people even buying open cans of baby formula from strangers online.
Infant formula is now locked up because it's one of the most stolen food products in Canada.
Most of Canada's baby formula comes from a largely consolidated U.S. market. And Frank says there is no incentive for baby formula giants to be competitive or bring down costs. She says increasing the Canada Child Benefit amount would help struggling families, or even nationalizing baby formula production. Jessica Pope, CBC News, Sudbury, Ontario.
And finally, music has a new king. Puerto Rican superstar Bad Bunny dominated the Latin Grammy Awards late last night in Las Vegas, taking home 5 trophies, including the coveted Album of the Year for his genre-bending record, Debí Tirar Más Fotos. The wins cement his status as a global icon just months before he makes history as the first Latin solo artist to headline the Super Bowl halftime show in February. That's a decision that highlights the immense growth of Latin music, which generated a record $1.4 billion in the U.S. alone last year. It's clear that Bad Bunny is here to stay. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Well, gang, viernes, happy Friday, Manitoba, for Grey Cup weekend. I'm Faith Bundal in for Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. So the CFL will crown a Grey Cup champion on Sunday. We're going to hear from sports reporter Greg Strong about the Saskatchewan-Montreal Grey Cup matchup and how Canadians are feeling about the rule changes coming soon to Canadian football. That's coming up. Also, where is Canada's worst commute? CBC's Marketplace has crunched the numbers and will tell us why they went to the trouble of trying to answer that very question. That's in this half hour. First, though, corpses, bullets, and spies in space. These are all addressed in Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield's new book, Final Orbit. He spoke with the CBC's Brittany Greenslade ahead of his Manitoba book tour. We'll hear from him and her coming up next here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Stay tuned. And it's mostly cloudy and 6 degrees here in downtown Winnipeg. We'll get into the weather in a moment here. First, though, Josh Crabb joining us with a look at news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. The city budget will be presented this afternoon. Property taxes are expected to rise by 3.5% in 2026, and Winnipeg plans to set aside $500 million to build the final phase of upgrades to its largest sewage treatment plant. Advocates of sex assault survivors hope a federal report into how the courts treat these cases will lead to better supports and better outcomes for the survivors themselves. The Office of the Federal Ombudsperson for Victims of Crime is expected to release their special report into this issue next week. And the Jets gave up a third-period lead in Seattle last night in a 5-3 loss to the Kraken. Your next local CBC News is at 6:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Josh Crabb from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Darren Morash is our streaming producer today. Hello to the folks watching us on CBC Television and our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Abby Adiemi is following your forecast today. It's going to be snowy in the north, but we'll see where you start first.
Well, Faith, it's going to be a day mixed in with lots of conditions in Manitoba for today. Let's talk about Churchill. We have that special, we call it snowfall warning in place for that part of the province. We're looking at about 10 to 25 centimeters of heavy snow that will fall through starting anytime soon, and that would ease by Saturday morning. This will definitely be making travel really, really difficult for folks in the Churchill area. So you're under this snowfall warning, looking at 10 to 25 centimeters heavy snow coming your way. And still in the north, Thompson towards the Gillam area, we're already seeing ice pellets falling in that part of the province. So up north, it's a bit of a mixed bag, while compared down south, it's more like a mild breeze in November. Sun and clouds in the forecast today. Here in Winnipeg, partly cloudy outside, 6 degrees right now. We're heading for a mild high of 12 degrees today. The skies will stay with just like a mix of sun and clouds. The winds will shift towards the west through the afternoon, and similar conditions we'll see around the Pembina Valley region through to Brandon, Dauphin, Gimli. Temperatures line up really nicely today. Most spots starting between -2 and 7 degrees, and we'll see temperatures climb into the low teens for most of this regions. While up north, it's going to be cooler with temperatures about 3 to 5 degrees right now, but it's going to be shifting. Churchill sits much at -12, and we'll only see temperatures warm up to -1 later with that heavy snow continuing through today. But right now, Winnipeg, partly cloudy and 6 degrees.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Abby Adiemi watching your forecast today. Corey Funke is watching your commute, and it'll be busy.
Yes, it will be busy today, and especially with all the things going on this weekend. The Grey Cup Festival, Santa Claus Parade is tomorrow. So just going to give you a heads up on some of those closures you want to keep an eye out for. So let's start with the Grey Cup Festival. So the one major closure you want to keep an eye out for is eastbound York Avenue. It's closed between Edmonton and Carleton Street all the way until Sunday morning at 9 a.m. And then tomorrow for the Santa Claus Parade, road closures start at 11 a.m. And that 11 a.m., Main Street southbound lanes between Portage and York are going to be closed. And then at 2 p.m. tomorrow, Portage Avenue between Main and Memorial are closed. And then Memorial Avenue northbound between Portage and Broadway, and then Memorial Avenue southbound between St. Mary and Broadway also going to be closed too for the Santa Claus Parade. So heads up, pretty much downtown tomorrow is not going to be a fun place to drive, essentially, is what you got to really, you got to want to avoid that altogether. But if you do see anything else going on out there right now, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. If you're walking, biking, and driving, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
15 and a half minutes after 6 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Now, many of you probably know who Chris Hadfield is. He is a retired Canadian Air Force colonel and a Canadian astronaut as well. He's been on 3 space missions, one of them as commander of the International Space Station. Now, he has spent a lot of time writing since retiring. The CBC's Brittany Greenslade spoke with him about his book, Final Orbit.
All right, Commander Colonel Chris Hadfield, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Another best-selling book here, getting great reviews. I want to start with the beginning of it, where it really says that many of the people are real and much of this actually happened. So what are the challenges with trying to weave these real events with the imaginary and make it cohesive?
I love it when I'm reading a book and I can't tell what's made up and what's real, where it all just sort of seems like a completely real thing that might have happened. And I work really hard when I write my fiction books to build that entire bubble of disbelief. And I set this book in the summer of 1975 when there were an amazing number of kind of crazy world events going on. Cold War, end of the Nixon presidency coming apart, bombings all across the United States, race riots, the rise of the Chinese space program, and then this peaceful flight between the Soviets and the Americans to try and show that they could cooperate even in times of the Cold War. So to me, that gave me all these things to pull from, and then I could weave my complicated and little tension-filled plot in amongst all of that. But in the back of the book, I put an author's notes, so you can find out, oh, that was real, oh, that was real, that was a real person, I didn't know that. It makes it like a bunch of Easter eggs you discover while you read it.
I did take a look at the back of that because it was interesting to be able to see, oh, okay, and some of these people you actually knew. So did that make it difficult?
Yeah, I know most of people in the astronaut business. I got to know pretty much everybody who went to the moon. I'm of the right vintage to have met them at the end of their careers and the start of mine, and all the current astronauts. And I've flown 3 different spaceships myself and been to a couple space stations. And so I think it gives me a real lucky position to write these books because I don't have to phone people to check things. I'm lucky enough to either have done them myself or know the people that did them. And it's part of my objective in the book as well is to not just tell the story, but to give the reader a true visceral sense of what is it actually like to fly a rocket ship, to float weightless, to go around the world, to be outside on a spacewalk, to have things go terribly wrong when you're so far from home, and how do people actually react? And I've been through a lot of that, and so I do my best to bring that realism into the book.
I know one thing people really loved when you were in space, and I really loved, was how you brought us along for your journey up there. We saw you recording music, we saw you teaching science to students. Was it important for you to make that accessible, or why was it important?
Imagine if you had spent, what is it now, November, December, January, February, March, since May, if you'd been off the Earth. Ever since May. Think of all of the various things you've done since May. Imagine if you'd gone around the world 2,500 times. And then you got into your little spaceship and you came thundering back down through the atmosphere and banged into the ground and rolled to a stop, and you emerged out onto your sort of wobbly legs trying to keep your balance. What would you do with the experience? The lifetime of work that got you up there, and then the thousands of times around the world, and all the things that you learned and observed. What do you do with that personal experience? You could just keep it to yourself, or maybe just tell your family or your friends. But I was there, as a public servant, and I think there's a huge responsibility to try and not just share it, but share the ideas behind it, so that other people, without having to have the same experience, can maybe make different decisions with their lives, to see something that might be possible to them that otherwise they might not even have imagined. And so that's why I've done like a BBC series and a National Geographic series, and written 3 nonfiction books as well as 3 fiction books. It's why I teach at university. It's why I work with a bunch of space companies. I'm even on a current world speaking tour right now. And it's why I write fiction, because all of it allows people then deep insight into something that is almost impossible.
Almost impossible, but not. The CBC's Brittany Greenslade speaking with astronaut Chris Hadfield. He was in Winnipeg last night promoting his new book, Final Orbit. You can find an extended version of that conversation on your CBC Winnipeg News at 6.
Hi, I'm Matea Roach, and I have a show on CBC. It's called Bookends. Every week, authors from Canada and around the world will join me to discuss their latest books. We'll have best-selling authors and rising stars. Our conversations will be smart and surprising, because when the book ends, the conversation begins.
Bookends with Matea Roach, Sunday afternoon at 1:30 in Newfoundland, 3 Pacific, and on demand on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
21 minutes after 6 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Faith Fundal, and this is Information Radio. Now, when you think of your morning drive or your transit ride into school or work, how busy is it? For many, we here at Information Radio are your morning commute companions, and we're spending more time with one another, according to stats. Tonight on CBC Marketplace, the team is asking who's got Canada's worst commute. They've dug into thousands of routes around the country over the past year, and Marketplace host Chris Glover joining us with more now. Good morning.
Good morning. How was your commute into work?
It was easy for me because when it's, early in the morning, not a lot of folks there. But you did put this call out as you tried to make the top 10 worst commutes by the numbers. This is a pretty ambitious thing. Why do this?
Yeah, the call out was great because we heard from more than 1,000 people across this country basically nominating themselves for the worst commute. And I wonder if people are listening along right now, they might think, oh, shoot, I wish I could have put my one forward because it is a rough one, or it's cold waiting out for that bus, or whatever the case may be. But we did certainly hear from drivers and transit riders across the country, including some from Winnipeg. Lovell Lai commutes from Regent Park to downtown Winnipeg along Concordia Ave and talks about how bottlenecked it is with too many cars and a poor road design. Poor road design is a complaint we got from a lot of people around the country. And interestingly, Bishop Grandin was the most mentioned road or offender with 28 mentions in all of our submissions. So something's going wrong on Bishop Grandin, I suppose. But there were definitely complaints across the country.
And so you got all these stories. What did you do with all of them?
We dug in a little deeper with some of them. We interviewed Michaela Helliwell, for example. Her submission jumped out right away, first of all, because it was hilariously written, but also because her commute is just so ugly. Get this. She travels 85 kilometers from her workplace to the west of Toronto, across the top of the city to a suburb in the east. And it's along the busiest highway in Canada, Ontario's Highway 401, which people who have visited Toronto will know that that's a 100-kilometer-an-hour highway, allegedly. Although it felt like it was kind of mocking us with that 100K sign.
Yeah.
As we came to a full and complete stop a couple times, Faith, during that drive home. She says that on Sundays with no traffic, it can take her 50 minutes, but with us, and on the average day, it takes a full hour longer, an hour and 50 minutes one way. So here is Michaela explaining why she thinks she has Canada's worst commute.
It's long and tedious, and it's getting worse. And gas prices going up, and it's just I'm stuck in the car for 2 hours. But the 2 hours of sitting here stationary, I get out of the car and I feel like I'm in my 90s. Like I get out of the car and I'm so stiff and sore from just sitting here for 2 hours, not being able to get up and stretch.
Okay, so you said without traffic 50 minutes. With traffic, an hour and 50.
Yeah.
What's the longest commute you've ever had on this route?
On this route, 4 hours.
4 hours?
4 hours. Once took me 4 hours to get home.
Did you like that shock in my voice? I could not believe when she said 4 hours one way. My gosh. But that was also a pretty extreme example, given the fact that apparently there was quite a big accident. But it still speaks to the kind of unpredictable nature of her commute. And in addition to these raw frustrations and stories, we also wanted to dig into the facts and find Canada's worst commute. So we linked up with several traffic experts to come up with a definition first, essentially comparing free flow traffic to how long it takes in rush hour, and the route with the biggest difference on average would become our worst commute. And we leaned on traffic expert Victor Couture and his team at a research lab in Toronto, who have for years been tracking thousands of routes from British Columbia to Nova Scotia and everywhere in between.
I mean, this sounds like a mammoth task. And you use his data to crown your winner, right?
Our winner or our loser, I guess, depending on your perspective. But yeah, we tapped into his data to develop our top 10. And here is Victor Couture walking through the top 5 and what they have in common.
You're going through extremely high population density area on roads that were designed to carry 50, 60 years ago, half of that kind of traffic. So they will be congested. And when you add these long commutes going through many exits, many interchange, many bottlenecks, some major construction projects, you get these frankly horrendous commutes.
All right, Winnipeg friends, put on your thinking cap. Is he describing your route or a route you've driven? You'll have to tune in tonight to watch Marketplace and see our top 10. But I can guarantee you that there are multiple Canadian cities and provinces represented in the top 10.
I want to say I'm excited, but I think worried is the better word to use. Okay, so
Confusion corner, maybe? I don't know.
Maybe. Okay, so identifying the problem is a big deal, but a big part of the episode was also about finding solutions.
Yeah, and so for that part, we leaned on the expertise of civil engineer Beher Abdul-Hai. He said the number one best option is better public transit, get people out of cars in the first place. The second best option, he said, is artificial intelligence, so managing the demand. Things like lights on highway on-ramps to manage the flow during peak periods. And then the third option, he said, which is likely the most controversial for folks, congestion pricing. He says it is time for drivers to be charged a fee on key routes to reduce demand during peak periods. And he said, given where congestion is at already in some Canadian cities, that move is inevitable.
Okay, congestion pricing. Where have you seen this, and what were the results?
Just in January, it was actually set up in New York City in Lower Manhattan, a congestion relief zone, charging drivers $9 to go into that zone. And as a result, the city says 67,000 fewer vehicles are entering the zone. And on some of their busiest tunnels, they've seen 16% faster drives during the morning rush hour. And this is a kind of a hilarious stat, but interesting too. Honking and vehicle noise complaints to 311 in the zone, they have all declined by 45%. So far and wide kind of benefits. The revenue, also $500 million, is going towards improving public transit each year. And despite the benefits that we found there in New York City and elsewhere, in Canada, provincial governments would have to approve new highway charges. Ontario's transportation minister said absolutely no to congestion pricing. He says it's just not affordable for folks. And think beyond adding congestion pricing. In the past few years, premiers, not just in Ontario, but also in Nova Scotia and British Columbia, have in fact removed tolls.
So even with those changes, Chris, traffic congestion has continued to get worse. I know you and your team put that congestion to the test, comparing driving to other modes of transportation. Who won?
Yes, Marketplace's first ever cross-city race, a 10K sprint across the city. Asha Tomlinson was our driver. Rosa Marcatelli hopped on a bike on a chilly morning for us, and David Common was back in action. We sent him out on a boat on Lake Ontario, and I raced on public transit. We had camera operators with us on the ground, in the vehicles, and overhead as well on drones. So they were capturing our every move. It's visually quite appealing and stunning, I think, and we're very competitive people, so it's fun to watch. But also it's revealing in terms of the winner, who won, who lost, and by how much. Hopefully it'll spark a conversation there as well. Do you have a guess, Faith, in terms of who won this little race?
I mean, I would say you, but
yes.
Yeah.
Me, you're just placating the guy you have in front of me.
That may or may not be true. I can't confirm or deny.
Well, that was an excellent answer. Thank you very much. Your vote has been lodged, and tune in tonight to find out.
Chris, thanks very much.
Thank you.
That's you can catch tonight's Marketplace episode, Canada's Worst Commute, tonight at 8 o'clock, or of course anytime on YouTube. And you heard Chris talk about congestion pricing. Would you pay $9 to travel on Abinogi-Mikina? Let us know at 2047-883205, 2047-883205, or radio 893 at cbc.ca. I'm Faith Fundal. More to come after the news.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Josh Crabb in Winnipeg at 6:30. It's mostly cloudy and 6 downtown, clear and -3 in Brandon, ice pellets and -2 in Thompson. Winnipeg plans to raise property taxes by 3.5% in 2026. Mayor Scott Gillingham says the property tax hike will return to the rate it was in 2023 and 2024, his first two budget years as mayor. The hike was higher this year at 5.95%. The property tax hike for next year will raise about $28 million more for the city. Gillingham says that alone won't balance the budget.
We expect all of our departments to control their costs and come in on budget. And so we continue to make an effort to keep things affordable for Winnipeggers while controlling our costs.
The city's budget for next year will be presented this afternoon. A ticket-fixing scandal suggests officers may be getting friends out of traffic infractions more often than the public knows. That's according to University of Winnipeg criminal justice professor Kevin Walby. Last week, Winnipeg Police Constable Elston Bostock pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice. He admitted to nearly 24 instances where he tried to get someone he knew out of a ticket. Walby thinks details of the case suggest ticket fixing could be a systemic issue within the Winnipeg Police Service.
We don't really focus a lot on police corruption in Canada because there's this idea that police are noble figures. They are these kind of guardians of society. It might be time that we need to look more carefully at police corruption in the WPS specifically.
Constable Bostock still faces criminal drug charges. Local assault survivors hope a federal review of how the courts treat sex assault cases will result in higher conviction rates. Right now, they're among the lowest of all violent crimes. Isabel Daniels is both a survivor and now a trauma counselor. Too often, she says, survivors are told to get over it.
How is somebody supposed to go over that when this person could be in their workplace? When this person could be a public figure, when this person is still walking with the freedom and the arrogance of getting away with sexual assault.
The Office of the Federal Ombudsperson for Victims of Crime is expected to release their special report into this issue next week. It's an outcome some called a miracle. The city of Flin Flon still stood after being surrounded by wildfire earlier this year. CBC recently spent time in the community as part of our Community in Focus initiative, and we spoke with some of the firefighters who fought to save the city. The CBC's Rosanna Hempel brings us their stories.
It's something that weighs heavy on me yet.
James Doak is among 28 firefighters from Flin Flon who fought to save their city from wildfires. When he nearly lost his own home, they stepped up too.
About 7 members there who were just dog-tired, dirty, been fighting all day for days. And Chief walked up to them, who's going to help Doak move his things? And they all stood up and they just came and did it. It was pretty amazing.
The day Flin Floners left under a mandatory evacuation order at the end of May, crews were gearing up for one of their most important fights. Fire Chief Jason Curas says they ended up stopping the wildfire from tearing south into the city. He says for more than 4 weeks straight, his crews did grueling shifts without days off.
It was a major milestone in structural firefighters showing what they can do when backs are up against the wall.
It's an event these firefighters say they won't forget, and the community says it won't forget them either. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Flin Flon.
And finally, a Winnipeg Blue Bomber has brought home some hardware.
And the 2025 most outstanding special team player is, for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Trey Vavel!
Rookie Trey Vavel has done it again. The dynamic returner who fired up fans with 2 touchdowns in a game against Toronto earlier this season scored a pair of individual honors last night at the CFL Awards banquet here in Winnipeg. First, Vavel was named the league's top special teams player. Then a few minutes later, he was announced as the CFL's outstanding rookie. The 25-year-old thanked his teammates, his family, and his fans, and his favorite donut shop.
These fans in Winnipeg have shown nothing but love when I've been here. First time being in Canada, I felt the love just around the town, like going to Nicolino's and Nicolino taking care of us, going to Tim Hortons, shout out to Tim Hortons. I love the Tim bits out here, so I've been loving Canada since I've been here, yeah.
Vavel led the CFL in punt return yardage while returning 2 kickoffs for scores, the most in the CFL. That is the CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local news is at 7:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Josh Crabb from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Maligayang Biyernes, happy Friday, Manitoba. Faith Wundal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the app. Hello as well to the folks watching us on CBC Television and on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Darren Morash is our streaming producer. Abby Adiemi is also following your forecast today.
Yeah, good morning, faithful folks in Churchill. Brace for it. Snowfall on its way to you, and it's going to be heavy. Hence, we have this snowfall warning in effect for Churchill, tracking it into the York region and surrounding communities. We're talking about 10 to 25 centimeters of heavy snow that will be dumping today before that eases tomorrow morning. So if you're traveling towards that part of the province, travel will definitely be tricky. Elsewhere across the province, it's going to be mild, breezy November. We're going to see a mix of sun and clouds across the south and some cloudy conditions in the central part of the province with light snow or rain, even tracking it all the way into the north. Winnipeg right now, we're sitting at 6 degrees, partly cloudy out there. Winnipeg climbs to about 12 degrees later with breezy south winds turning westerly later in the day with a mix of sun and clouds. In the Pembina Valley region, we're looking at similar conditions. 7 degrees at this time. We're seeing partly cloudy conditions around Morden, tracking it toward Portage. Your high warms up to about 14, though some thicker clouds will come your way this morning, and then it's going to be blending with some sunshine later in the afternoon. In the Westman region from Brandon, tracking it towards Neepawa at this time, we're seeing -3 there. It is clear out there. You move to a mild high of 14 degrees with steady west breeze and brighter breaks in between. In the Parkland region, Duff and Russell, Roblin, we're looking at 3 degrees at this time. Clear conditions also enjoying. The region climbs to about 13 degrees later with a mix of sun and clouds and the gusty west winds. For the Interlake region around Gimli, you're sitting around 2 degrees at this time, partly cloudy. You warm up to 12 later with mild southerly breeze and, peaks of sunshine here and there. For the powerful influence surrounding communities, these regions, we're seeing 3 degrees, 4 degrees, depending on where you are, partly cloudy out there. The region warms to about 5 later in the day. For Thompson, tracking it towards Split Lake, we're seeing -2 and ice pellets at that part of the province. Expect periods of rain and snow mixed through the day with breezes shift to the west later. You warm up to about 3, while in Churchill, where we have that snowfall warning in place, -12 at this time. It's partly cloudy, heavy snow on its way, and that would come with some gusty winds, and your high will only be around -1 before easing later tonight. So cross-board is mild in the south, cloudy and cooler as you travel north, and with Churchill battling heavy snow today into tomorrow. Right now, Winnipeg, partly cloudy, 6 degrees.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Abby Adiemi following your forecast. We're going to talk about the CFL matchup this weekend, the big Grey Cup game in this half hour of the program. Stay tuned for that. Corey Funk also joining us because Grey Cup is going to keep folks busy as well.
Yes, and lots of things going on this weekend. So we got the Grey Cup, we got the Santa Claus Parade. So long story short, if you're thinking about driving through downtown, not going to be so fun. If you're walking through downtown, though, going to be a great time. I want to break it down for you a little bit about what you can expect. So for the Grey Cup Festival, there are some street closures in downtown Winnipeg, particularly eastbound York Avenue. It's closed between Edmonton Street and Carleton Street all the way until Sunday at 9 a.m. It's closed right now. And then also, the Street Cup that's happening right beside us, actually, this is the street festival right now at the U of W on Portage and Spence. So that little part is closed as well. So that's for the Grey Cup Festival. But then tomorrow, I want to look ahead to the Santa Claus Parade. So there's street closures starting as early as 11 a.m. Main Street southbound between Portage Avenue and York Avenue is going to be closed starting at 11 a.m. Main Street northbound is going to be open all day. Also, Broadway is still going to be open all day. But then at 2 p.m., Portage Avenue between Main Street and Memorial is going to close down. And Memorial Avenue northbound between Portage Avenue and Broadway also closed. And then Memorial Avenue southbound between St. Mary and Broadway is also going to be closed. So if you're wondering what the route is, it's going to start at 5 p.m., the Santa Claus Parade, and it's going to run west down Portage, turn down Memorial, and it's going to end at Memorial and St. Mary. So that's the route. Should be fun, but not so much if you're driving downtown tomorrow. But if you see anything going on right now, feel free to give me a call. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, our studio director here on the program. We're at 20 minutes before 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Holly Cottenham joining us now. Hallie Cottenham. Sorry, Hallie.
It's okay.
With a business report. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's Friday. And it's early. Usually I'm
it's Grey Cup weekend.
It is Grey Cup weekend. There's so many things going on. Speaking of so many things, yesterday we heard about the new list of major projects announced, mostly mines, big energy. What has the reaction been so far?
Well, not surprisingly, premiers who landed a big deal were happy, like Susan Holt in New Brunswick, David Eby in BC. And even though there's no bitumen pipeline on the list, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith was supportive, saying she's happy to see a focus on resource extraction. She says she's still in talks with the feds over a pipeline, but not everyone was happy. On that list yesterday include the Silicium's LNG project on BC's northwest coast. It is co-owned and it is backed by the Niska Nation and its elected leader, but it is opposed by two nearby Indigenous groups.
We, as hereditary chiefs, we have a right to protect that. We have a right to protect the future.
I am specifically opposed to Silicium's LNG.
And who else isn't happy? Environmental groups who say Canada's focus should be on renewables, not fossil fuels. And Tim Hodgson is Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. He was asked if Canada is pursuing an economic agenda at the expense of a climate agenda. Hodgson says our LNG is in demand and has a smaller carbon footprint than others.
When we have an opportunity to do that in the most responsible way, and that generates good paying Canadian jobs, and that pays for things like $10 a day daycare and pharmacare and our health care. That's something that I think Canadians want us to take a hard look at.
So far, none of the dozen projects referred to the Major Projects Office has been designated as being in the national interest. That's what would trigger exemptions from certain environmental laws.
Hallie, some folks who might check their investments every morning might be slightly concerned because there was a lot of red ink in the markets. What happened?
Yeah, you might want to give that a little bit of a break today. Don't check. The TSX finished more than 570 points lower, down almost 2%. Analysts are blaming a spillover effect from losses in the U.S. tech sector. Wall Street, for its part, posted one of its worst days since April when President Trump announced his Liberation Day tariffs. AI stocks are what led the losses. Many concerned they're overvalued, drawing comparisons to the 2000 dot-com bubble. I don't know if you remember Michael Lewis's book and the movie that came from it, The Big Short. The real-life investor Michael Burry was played by Christian Bale.
Watch, it will pay. I may have been early, but I'm not wrong.
Well, Burry successfully bet against the U.S. housing market in 2008. Fast forward to this week, he deregistered his hedge fund, Scion Asset Management, saying he'll liquidate the fund and return the capital, telling his investors that the value of securities is not in sync with the markets and hasn't been for some time. Recently, he's been overtly critical of AI companies, suggesting some are being creative with their accounting.
There seems to be a sudden uptick in talk about the Sound of Music, and I'm confused. Why is this?
It's because the Pope, no other than the Pope, has revealed it's one of his favorite movies.
So, a deer, a female deer, Ray, a drop of golden sun.
Now, adjusted for inflation, the film has earned more than $3.3 billion, making it among the highest-grossing films of all time. Have you seen it, Faith?
It's yes, several times.
Okay.
And it's so, I mean, the singing is very, very sweet. There's something about the music, right?
I've seen it dozens of times. It's kind of like a Christmas tradition at our house. But I discovered something new about it, even having seen it so many times. Like the real Maria von Trapp made a cameo appearance in the film.
No kidding.
Yeah. And you know that Christopher Plummer, Canadian late great actor, played Captain Georg von Trapp. But others were considered for his role, including Bing Crosby, Richard Burton, Sean Connery.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I found out more. Like, for example, child actors who auditioned for a role as one of the Von Trapp kids included, and these people didn't get roles, but they included Mia Farrow, Patty Duke, Terry Garr, Kurt Russell, and the Osmonds. And this is what I found even most fascinating, is the film has been identified by the BBC as what it would program in the event of a nuclear war. And speaking of the BBC and The Sound of Music, this week it featured a story about the last living Von Trapp child, 86-year-old Johann Von Trapp. Still helps to run the family resort that his mother Maria founded in Stowe, Vermont. But don't expect to see any signs of the movie when you pay $400 a night to stay in the Edelweiss room, because Disney holds the right to the movie. So no official imagery from The Sound of Music can be found anywhere on the grounds of the resort.
Do they say good night or goodbye in that song?
Auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Oh, well done.
Happy Friday.
Take care, Faith.
Thanks very much. Hallie Cottenham with the business news. We're at 14 and a half minutes before 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. You are listening to Information Radio. I'm Faith Fondal in for Marcy Marcusa. Hello as well to the folks on CBC Television and on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Hallie talked about Christmas there. It is the middle of November, and any pharmacy, grocer, hardware store you go has seasonal goods available. Coca-Cola already advertising Christmas is coming in cinemas. Seems like the seasonal celebration shows up earlier and earlier every year. I know. My mom's Filipino. She has it up like in September. The CBC's Carson Knox hit the streets to find out if people have given up on complaining about this, or is there even still resentment towards Christmas creep?
I am not a fan of Christmas creep. I think that Christmas should start in December. I don't put my tree up till December because I buy a real tree and I can't do that in November. I think there's constant pressure just to make everything materialized and the perfect Instagram moment and everything else. And I think the more that we lean into that, the sooner that Christmas starts. And I think Christmas is about my family being together and having time together to eat, to enjoy the things that we like, to take a break. And I just think we rush it.
And how do you, I guess, respond when you see it in stores and retail and in advertising in the middle of November?
I just walk on by.
We are just excited about the offers, like
sales.
Discounts, yeah, sales. So just like more brands like Adidas and Nikes, and they are running online store sales like 30% off, 50% off. So we are just enjoying that.
Well, you see Halloween in August, right? So it's basically just a strategy for retailing. Not a bad strategy, but yeah, it is a bit over the top, I think.
And it gets earlier every year.
Yes, it does. Yeah, far too early.
Actually, we don't mind it. We're going to decorate this weekend. Yeah, we always do, around the 12th of November.
Why do you like to start at this time of year?
It's my mother's birthday who passed away, so we put it up now.
The way the economics is going right now, you got to make sure you save for December, which is we're now in November, so like it's not too soon. You just got to do what you got to do. The more important things is Christmas. It's once in a year.
Well, for me, I love it because like after Halloween, like, you know, like the day after October 31st, I'm looking forward to the holiday season and everything. So, you know, like seeing all the Christmas trees, the promotions and everything, it really like, you know, keeps me in the holiday spirit and everything. So I love it.
So it's not too soon?
No, never too soon for a holiday.
Yeah, it's creeping in more and more, even in the UK, so the lights go up. A lot of people don't even take them down nowadays. The shops is the worst thing, when they're bringing in Christmas deals and pushing it.
Does it make Christmas less special somehow?
For me, no, because I'm not affected by it, but I could see how it could make others feel like it's prolonged.
Costco's had their Christmas stuff right after Halloween, like the day after, so.
How do you feel about that?
It's a little intrusive, actually. Yeah, I don't enjoy the push and the marketing scheme. Yeah,
it's all about money. It just comes down to the fact that people want to sell Christmas presents, and they don't care about Remembrance Day or the people who died for their country, for their people. So to go from Remembrance Day and then the right next, now you're playing Christmas music, to me, that's ridiculous.
I love Christmas. You know what? The sooner we can get Christmas started, the happier I am. I really don't like Halloween, so I'm happy to get that out of the way. I'm just a big Christmas girl. I'm all for it. I think as soon as November hits, it's fine. That's where I stand on it.
Well, actually, I prefer it in December. Sometimes it is a little bit early-ish. And I think maybe that kind of wears on the holiday a bit, that it's more exciting if we kind of leave it until December.
Try saying that to my mom. It's not going to happen. The CBC's Karsten Knox speaking with folks about Christmas creep. We're at
This is Cross Country Checkup for the first time ever, a regularly scheduled national open line program.
And so it began. Hi, I'm Ian Hannamansing. 60 years ago, Checkup broke the mold by handing the mic to everyday Canadians. To celebrate, we'll be in Charlottetown, our next stop on Checkup's Cross Canada tour. Our topic, how are you coping without a family doctor? What impact has it had on your health? That's Checkup from Charlottetown, Sunday at 4 Eastern on CBC Radio 1.
10 minutes before 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Expecting for Winnipeg today, a sun and cloud mixture and a high of 12 degrees. The 112th Grey Cup is this Sunday, of course, outdoors here in Winnipeg. The Saskatchewan Roughriders taking on the Montreal Alouettes. On paper, a pretty even matchup, but odds makers are giving a slight edge to the team from the Prairies, our cousins, with the intense fans in green. For his thoughts on the Fall Classic of Canadian football, we've reached Greg Strong, sports reporter with the Canadian Press, who has covered many a Grey Cup. Good morning, Greg. Welcome back.
Good morning. Good to be on with you.
How do you think these teams stack up against each other?
Yeah, I mean, pretty even matchup. I'd say it's a coin flip. You've got two really strong defenses, both teams coming in hot after winning their respective division finals in dramatic fashion. Late fourth quarter wins on both sides. And yeah, as you say, I mean, the Rider Nation will be out in force for sure. I think it'll be more of a home field feel for Saskatchewan in this one.
And those players, who are you sort of watching for who might make the difference in the matchup?
Well, the big storyline coming into this one is the status of Montreal quarterback Davis Alexander, who tweaked a nagging hamstring injury last weekend. And he says he'll be ready to go. He's been practicing this week. But the big question is, how effective will he be? Slated to be about -4 on Sunday night. And, you know, a hamstring normally takes 4 to 6 weeks at least to properly heal. So that's a quick turnaround from last Saturday when he tweaked it. He says he'll be good to go, though. But to me, that's the storyline. I mean, Montreal is such a different team when he's not starting. He's undefeated as a starter with the Alouettes this season, 3-8. Montreal's record when he's not starting. So obviously two different teams. So it all depends on what level Alexander is able to perform at on Sunday night.
Blue Bombers fans are pretty devoted, and then there are Rough Riders fans. They are quite intense. What are you expecting in terms of the atmosphere on Sunday?
Yeah, I think it'll be an electric atmosphere. I mean, Winnipeg obviously is such a great CFL market. They love their Blue Bombers, but they love Canadian football. I remember covering the Grey Cup there. I think it was 2006, and just being blown away at the vibe and the atmosphere. And I would expect the same on Sunday when you have obviously two passionate fan bases in Montreal and in particular Saskatchewan, which I think is the most passionate in the entire league. A 5.5, 6 hour ride from Regina to Winnipeg. I would expect plenty of green and white in the stands on Sunday, and we'll see if that gives the Riders a boost in what should be a pretty tight matchup.
And it's the last Grey Cup before the CFL brings in some contested, some not rule changes. I'm choosing my words carefully here. What effect do you think they're supposed to have on the game? Remind us of those changes.
Yeah, it's a long list of changes, but just to kind of broad stroke it, the big ones are the field dimensions will be changing over 2027. It's a 2-year phased-in approach for all of these changes, but the big ones are the field will be changing a little bit, not as long. The width will remain the same, but the end zones also not quite as long. The big thing is they're moving the goalposts from the goal line to the back of the end zone, and they're tweaking the Rouge setup, which I know a lot of CFL purists bristled at when that was announced, but basically no longer awarding a single point on a missed field goal that goes through the end zone or a punt that goes through the end zone. And so you kind of won't have that situation where two teams are tied late in the fourth quarter and a Rouge is the deciding factor in who wins who loses. So certainly, mixed reaction, I think it's fair to say, when those changes were announced a few weeks back, but a 2-year phased-in approach, and the CFL hopes it leads to just a better brand of football and a more entertaining product.
The Grey Cup, do you think it's going to go to a Prairie team or the team over there?
I mean, it's tough to predict. I like the Riders, though, just given that Davis Alexander's not quite 100%, and that's such a huge factor for Montreal. If they can't get their offense going, I mean, I really like the Riders there. I mean, Trevor Harris, of course, the quarterback for Saskatchewan, has 2 Grey Cup rings as a backup, but this would be his first as a starter, and I know he wants to kind of cement that legacy, obviously. I like the Riders, and I'll go 30-13 Saskatchewan. That's my pick.
Greg, thanks for this.
All right, thanks.
Greg Strong, sports reporter with the Canadian Press. And of course, the big game is at Princess Auto Stadium here in Winnipeg on Sunday.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world. Staying on top of stories around the globe. And connected close to home. It's news you can trust. Delivered when you want and where you want on Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1, local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
4 minutes before 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Good morning to you. Thanks for welcoming us into your morning routine. And good morning as well to Josh Crabb from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk.
Good morning. A Winnipeg researcher thinks a ticket-fixing case involving Winnipeg police hints at a broader culture issue within the force. University of Winnipeg criminal justice professor Kevin Walby echoed a U of M law professor who last week said there should be a public inquiry. The city's budget for next year will be presented this afternoon, and Winnipeg plans to raise property taxes 3.5% in 2026. Mayor Scott Gillingham says the property tax hike will return to the rate it was in 2023 and 2024, his first 2 budget years as mayor. And a Winnipeg Blue Bomber took home some hardware at last night's CFL Awards. Trey Vavel is the league's top special teams player and the CFL's outstanding rookie. Your next local CBC News is at 7:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Josh Crabb from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. So far, no major closures or delays to tell you about on your commute, but because of the Grey Cup, there will be some closures starting at 11 o'clock this morning. Southbound Main, tomorrow morning, I should say, so tomorrow morning on Saturday. Southbound Main Street between McDermott Avenue and York Avenue, Portage Avenue East from Westbrook to Main, westbound St. Mary from Edmonton Street to Memorial. There's lots of closures. We'll tell you more about it in our next half hour of the program. If you see any issues on your commute, let us know. Call our commuter line 204-788-3093, 204-788-3093. Looking at the current conditions right now, mostly cloudy, 6 degrees here in downtown Winnipeg. Clear and -3 in Brandon. Partly cloudy and 3 in Dauphin. Similar conditions in Flin Flon, 3 degrees there. Light freezing drizzle falling at the airport in Thompson and -2 in Churchill. Partly cloudy, -12. The region is under a snowfall warning. We'll give you a full look at your forecast, still to come on the program. Also, coming up in our next hour, many arts organizations are on the road to financial recovery after the pandemic. Still to come, we're going to check in with Manitoba Opera about its journey back. And it's good so far. That's the too long didn't read version. But stay tuned for that conversation coming up at 7:40 here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Faith Mundal in for Marcy Marcusa, Darren Morash, our streaming producer on CBC TV and our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Corey Funk, studio director, and Abby Adiyemi on the controls following your forecast as well. Lots to come here on the program. Goodbye to the folks watching on CBC television. Of course, you can find us on YouTube. And more to come in our next hour. Stay tuned. World Report is standing by.
On The Current.
The new spectrum, I think, is not left versus right on economics, but open versus closed.
A year ago, CNN host Fareed Zakaria published a book about the history of populist movements, but so much has happened since then that he needed to update it. Fareed Zakaria on Trump, immigration, Canada, and the age of revolution, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. CBC Marketplace analysis shows daily rush hour commutes in Canada are getting worse. But governments across the country are pushing back against embracing congestion pricing, even though experts say a fee to use busy roads at peak hours could reduce traffic jams. Marketplace host Chris Glover has been taking a closer look.
Ontario's Highway 401 routinely comes to a halt during Michaela Helliwell's 2-hour commute.
We're stopped. All right, so you can have a stretch now, hands off the wheel.
She and hundreds of others responded to a Marketplace call-out, arguing they have Canada's worst commute.
The worst commute has got to be in Edmonton.
Research analyzed by Marketplace shows commutes across the country are getting longer, especially in Montreal, Vancouver, and Toronto, due to construction, population growth, and lack of capacity. Data shows congestion in those cities is up to 5% worse now compared to 2019.
It's inevitable. It has to come.
Civil engineer Beher Abdulhai says adding a fee to key routes would reduce demand during peak hours.
Congestion pricing is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
In January, congestion pricing was set up in New York City.
That's why drivers have suddenly become supporters of congestion pricing.
Jano Lieber runs the program and says on average traffic is moving 20 minutes faster. But in Canada, provincial governments must approve new highway charges. Ontario's Transport Minister Pravmeet Sarkaria says no.
It's something that we just absolutely fundamentally disagree with.
Beyond adding a congestion price, in the past few years, premiers in Ontario, Nova Scotia, and British Columbia removed tolls. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
That Marketplace investigation runs on CBC TV and CBC Gem tonight at 8:30 in Newfoundland. Ontario's controversial ban on municipal speed cameras comes into effect today. Premier Doug Ford calls them a cash grab, claiming they don't slow down speeding drivers. But dozens of mayors have asked the province not to scrap the program, citing evidence they do reduce speeding. The Ford government says it will instead spend $210 million on alternative traffic calming measures like speed bumps and raised crosswalks. Russia carries out a massive wave of widespread bombardments across Ukraine overnight. The attacks being called the most severe in recent weeks. At least 6 people have been killed, dozens more injured. As Anna Cunningham reports, Kyiv took the brunt of the assault.
The soundtrack to Kyiv's night. Air raid sirens, Ukraine's air defences, the buzz of incoming drones, and then explosions. The skyline of Ukraine's capital lit up with an orange glow. President Volodymyr Zelensky, posting on social media, says this was a heinous and wicked attack against his country. Ukraine's military says it counted 430 incoming drones and 18 missiles. By daylight, in the morning sun, the damage is clearly visible. 11 apartment blocks reportedly took direct hits. Maria Karchenko's apartment was hit. She says she settled in the corridor with her dog, then realised her hair was on fire and she could not see or hear anything. This is a change in tactics by Russia, who recently concentrated on the east of Ukraine, targeting energy infrastructures there as winter months approach. Overnight, Ukraine carried out strikes on Russia. Zelensky says his troops used missiles on what he calls designated targets. He called it an entirely just response to Russia's ongoing terror. According to state media, the Russian Defense Ministry claims to have carried out massive strikes on Ukrainian military, industrial and energy facilities. Russia consistently denies targeting residential areas, but the clean-up in Kyiv today paints a different picture. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
Diplomatic tension is rising between China and Japan. Beijing has summoned the Japanese ambassador after Japan's new Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi suggested Tokyo could use force to defend Taiwan if the situation became, quote, survival threatening. Beijing countered with a warning that Japan would face crushing defeat if it interfered. Japan's top government spokesperson, Minoru Kihara, dismissed the incident as, quote, inappropriate.
台湾海峡の平和と安定、これは日本の安全保障。
Kihara says Taiwan's peace and security is vital for Japan, adding that disputes should be resolved through dialogue. Indigenous protesters once again demanding their voices be heard at the COP30 climate conference in Brazil. Earlier this week, they scuffled with security guards as they tried to force their way into the talks. This morning, they blocked the main entrance. The CBC's Susan Ormiston is there.
Hold the line. Hold the line. Hold the line.
A long line of Indigenous people blocked the main road to the entrance of COP30 this morning. A peaceful protest. They stood their ground from 5 a.m., demanding a greater say in the negotiations going on inside. They are worried about future potentials for drilling of oil near the Amazon River, and they want more of their land protected. They were able to secure a meeting with the president of COP30, who was escorted by the Indigenous people a long way away into a more secure area. When we spoke to the president, he said they will make space for greater dialogue with the Indigenous people of Brazil. It's something that the Brazilian president promised out of these COP30 negotiations. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Belém, Brazil.
The mining giant BHP Group is found liable for Brazil's worst environmental disaster. A judge in the UK has ruled the Anglo-Australian company is responsible for a dam collapse 10 years ago. 19 people were killed when toxic waste spilled into a major river, devastating villages downstream. BHP did not own the tailings dam, but the judge says its negligence led to the collapse and the risk was foreseeable. Another phase of the trial will determine damages. Claimants are seeking close to $50 billion in compensation. We're taking a closer look at the 7 major infrastructure projects Prime Minister Mark Carney is recommending for fast-track approval. Among those that could be fast-tracked, a $500 million hydroelectric power project in Nunavut's capital city. Iqaluit is growing steadily, and as Juanita Taylor tells us, this project is designed to eliminate the city's costly and carbon-heavy dependence on diesel fuel.
This is a breakthrough for Arctic sovereignty and sustainability.
That's Prime Minister Mark Carney describing a new way of generating energy in Iqaluit. Exciting news for Harry Flaherty that the Iqaluit Nukiksautit made the list of projects streamlined for fast-track approvals.
The federal government is listening to us.
Flaherty is with Nunavut Nukiksautit Corporation, or NNC. The group is working to get the territory's largest city off its reliance on diesel power.
In Iqaluit alone, power plant uses about 17 million litres of fuel and 65,000 tons of carbon is put out.
To achieve this, a dam would be built 60 kilometers northeast of Iqaluit along the Kugaluk River. 15 to 30 megawatts of generated power would travel through an 85-kilometer transmission line, supplying Iqaluit's 9,000 residents and potentially more, like future mines.
I am pleased that Canada is beginning to act as an Arctic nation.
That's Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated President Jeremy Tungaluk. Getting off diesel is part of NTI's sovereignty security strategy.
With Arctic sovereignty and security at the forefront of global affairs.
The project will cost about $500 million and has yet to get regulatory approval. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Yellowknife.
And finally, a look at the music that could set the tone for the weekend.
Si antes te hubiera conocido, seguramente.
That is Karol G, who won the coveted Song of the Year award late last night at the 2025 Latin Grammys in Las Vegas. The night, a triumph for Latin music, which is now a $1.4 billion industry in the U.S. alone. And while Karol G took home top song, the biggest winner, Puerto Rican superstar Bad Bunny, who took home 5 awards, including Album of the Year. Bad Bunny, also the most awarded act, alongside the Argentine duo of Catriel and Paco Amoroso, who also claimed 5 trophies. The high-energy show also featured performances from music legends like Santana, confirming Latin music's global cultural dominance.
ey, que hubiera sido. Ay, si antes te hubiera conocido.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
No como amigos, ey, y yo te veo y no sé cómo actuar. Bebé, pa' conquistarte que me pase en el manual. Espero lo que sea, yo no me voy a quitar.
Magandang umaga, good morning, Manitoba. Happy Friday. Faith Fundal here. In for Marcy Marcusa, this is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Coming up on the program in this hour, the lights were dimmed a few years ago, but now the performing arts scene in Winnipeg says folks are bouncing back after the pandemic. We'll hear from Manitoba Opera about its recovery coming up. Also, survivors and advocates say there's only one way to repair a justice system that's flawed when it comes to sex assault cases, and that is to overhaul it entirely. We'll hear more about that coming up. First, though, 30 years. It's how long a Winnipeg woman was a victim of sexual exploitation. And for her, it all started at a large public event. During this Grey Cup weekend, she wants you to look out for others. That conversation next here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and on YouTube. We're at 11 minutes after 7 o'clock, and Josh Crabb joining us with a look at news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. A ticket-fixing scandal suggests officers may be getting friends out of traffic infractions more often than the public knows. That's according to a University of Winnipeg criminal justice professor who's concerned ticket-fixing could be a systemic issue within the Winnipeg Police Service. Winnipeg plans to set aside $500 million to build the final phase of upgrades to its largest sewage treatment plant. Mayor Scott Gillingham says the budget for next year will include this commitment to the North End Water Pollution Control Centre. The city's spending plan also calls for a 3.5% tax hike. And it's an outcome some called a miracle. The city of Flin Flon is still standing after being surrounded by wildfire earlier this year. And now some of the firefighters who helped save the community are sharing their stories. Your next local CBC News is at 7:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Josh Crabb from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Abby Adiemi is following the forecast.
Yeah, it's a mild, breezy Friday across the province with a mix of sun and clouds focused in the southern part of the province, while we're going to be feeling cooler air settle in the north and a generally fresh, dry feel across the province. Up north, Churchill faces this heavy snowfall. We're talking about 10 to 25 centimeters expected through the day. Before that would ease Saturday morning. But here in Winnipeg, it is partly cloudy, 6 degrees this morning. It's a kind of breezy south wind turning west later in the day. And we'll see our temperatures climb to a high near 12 degrees by the afternoon period, then some clear skies overnight. In the southern part of the province, we're looking at -3 in Brandon at this time, 3 degrees in Dauphin, 2 in Gimli, and 3 in the Pas. Thompson is at -12 and Thompson is at -2 and Churchill at -12. Winnipeg, once again, we are at 6 degrees.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Abby Adiemi on the controls and following your forecast for today. Darren Morash is our string producer. Thanks very much for making us look and sound good online and on TV earlier today. Corey Funk is following the commute because lots of closures.
Yes, lots of closures to keep an eye out for now, and then also over the weekend, because of course there's the Grey Cup Street Party Festival going on this weekend in Winnipeg, all over, and also the Santa Claus Parade happening tomorrow. So let's start with the closures because of the Grey Cup Festival. So right now, eastbound York Avenue is closed between Edmonton Street and Carlton Street all the way until Sunday at 9 a.m. Also, Yonge Street from Portage Avenue to Ellis also closed until Sunday at 9 a.m. That is for the Grey Cup Festival. Now, tomorrow, for the Santa Claus Parade, closures start at 11 a.m. And the first street to close at 11 a.m. is Main Street southbound between Portage Avenue and York. So heads up there. And then starting at 2, more closures. Portage Avenue between Main Street and Memorial is going to be closed. Memorial Avenue northbound between Portage Avenue and Broadway, and Memorial Avenue southbound between St. Mary and Broadway also closed. That's because the parade, it's going to start at 5 p.m. It's going to start at Portage and Main, make its way west, and then turn down Memorial and end at Memorial and St. Mary. So it should be fun to be a pedestrian downtown. Not so fun to be someone driving downtown tomorrow. So you may want to just avoid downtown because there's also a lot of parking restrictions as well throughout downtown because of that too. If you see anything else going on right now, though, you can give me a call if you're walking, biking, driving. Would love to hear from you. That number, 204-788-3093.
17 minutes after 7 o'clock, 15 minutes after 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Faith Fundal. As people gather in our city for the Grey Cup, most are here to watch football, but some are here for more sinister purposes. There is a new campaign aimed to raise awareness about sexual exploitation of Indigenous women and girls during large-scale events. It's called Can You See Us? Exploitation is not a game. During this Grey Cup, Gaganawe Mananig, formerly the MMIW G2S Plus Implementation Committee, wants you to enjoy the game and festivities, but also to keep an eye out for others as well. They say sexual exploitation happens more often than you think at major events. This week, advocate Angela Lavallee spoke with Radio Noon guest host Laurie Hoogstraten.
So when we say exploitation, what kinds of things are we talking about?
We are talking about the power over the minds, bodies, and spirits of folks who are being pulled into sexual exploitation and human trafficking. It is a difference from sex work and sexual exploitation, human trafficking, where sex is consensual. Sexual exploitation and human trafficking is not.
Today, a Winnipeg survivor shares her story. Brandy Blind spoke at the launch of the campaign last week, and Brandy joins us on the line now. Welcome to the program.
Hello, thank you.
I wonder, what were you thinking as you heard that audio, that clip?
It just brings back a lot of my past, and just, allowing me to know that I was exploited at that time. And it just makes a lot of sense when you hear it from other people right at this current time. At that time, I didn't know I was being exploited. So there again, it comes with consent, right?
Brandy, take us back to the first time you experienced this. What was it like?
I was a child, actually. I wasn't even aware. Unfortunately, it was kind of normalized with some of the upbringing that I had kind of grown up with. I grew up in the inner city, so I had a lot of barriers, and this was something that I was groomed into, and I didn't even realize at that time.
And this happened at large events. Did you have any idea that what was actually happening?
I didn't realize what was happening at first. Unfortunately, a lot of times when I was exploited, I was being invited out to come and hang out, have fun. Then came liquor and drugs at that time. I didn't even realize until it was kind of too late what was happening.
Brandy, what do you tell people about why victims are usually targeted at these large public events?
I think because, a lot of these are predators. They're good at what they do. They're our family members, our coworkers. We have no idea. They look like everybody else, unfortunately, right? So it's easy for them to, pick their victims. They see our young, vulnerable people. They see how easy it is to manipulate, to use those words to, it's a good thing at the beginning, you're groomed into it, you're promised certain things, these predators are nice to you, and you have no idea because they've done this, right? This is what they do. They look for vulnerable people to exploit.
And we have heard countless stories of how vulnerable Indigenous women are, and then you add when add to the fact that they're young as well. What happens when you have that? Why are those sorts of folks more vulnerable?
I think because we're used, it's easier to use these words, to manipulate people. When you're at such a young age, you're trusting. You're easier to, kind of change that narrative and to, promise people, they spend money, hotels, food, gifts, shopping. So it kind of allows our young people to put those guards down, thinking that these are people who are being nice to them, not really realizing what they're doing.
Sounds like there were a whole bunch of red flags that you described there already. What other red flags do you recognize now that you didn't recognize back then?
Well, I didn't realize, I think the big age gap a lot of the times, when you have younger, young children, young teenagers, they shouldn't be in, large groups of men. I think a lot of times it's an age gap,
Why did you decide to be part of this campaign, Brandy?
I think because it's taken me many years to actually see all the harm and with healing, with support, and realizing it wasn't my fault. It wasn't okay what was happening to me. And it's not okay for this to go on, with our youth. There's a lot of trauma attached with this, and it takes a toll on people. And these are our children, these are our nieces, these are our neighbors, these are our grandchildren. Yeah.
What do you want people to keep in mind as we enter Grey Cup weekend?
Just to speak about what's going on. The more that we speak about this, our children, our youth. It educates them. It brings out conversations. It helps them become safer because they're having these conversations. It opens their eyes sometimes to this is what's going on and how to identify that or kind of protect themselves and keep them safe. It takes the blame off of blaming it on our kids. And it puts it out there and puts the blame on the adults and the systems that exploit them, unfortunately, right?
Brandy, thank you for making space to talk about this, and take good care.
Thank you so much.
Brandy Blind is a survivor of sexual exploitation. Now, if you or someone you know needs support, the National MMIWG hotline is 1-844 413-6649, 1-844-413-6649. You can find more information on this campaign that Brandy was talking about. Just look for Can You See Us? Exploitation is not a game. Again, that's Can You See Us? Exploitation is not a game.
I'm Suresh Das. I've spent my career writing about the local favorites that make Canada's food scene truly unique. I bit into a chili. Woo! From vibrant street food to comforting traditional dishes.
The most important ingredients in jollof rice, love.
To innovative, personal twists. Butter chicken lasagna.
Butter chicken lasagna. That's what made it all happen.
I believe every bite tells a story. Now, I want to share those stories with you.
New series Locals Welcome with Suresh Das. Watch free on CBC Gem.
23 minutes after 7 o'clock, you're on CBC Radio 1. I'm Faith Fundal. This is Information Radio. And Winnipeg band Meadows has this song now that we're going to play for you. This one's called River Again.
I feel the same again.
That's Winnipeg rock band Meadows with River Again. Scott Reguer joining us now from your CBC National Sports Desk. Good morning.
Hey there, Faith.
I didn't stay up last night. Maybe for the better because it just wasn't to be for the Winnipeg Jets.
No, they were looking good throughout their game in Seattle against the Kraken, Faith. In fact, the Jets held the lead 3 separate times in this game, including heading into the final period. But you can tell by the way I'm talking right now, things didn't go the way they would have liked. They ended up losing to the Kraken 5-3. Winnipeg head coach Scott Arniel says the loss came down to, well, a lack of execution.
This group here, usually you're up 3-2 on the road going into the third period. That's lockdown for us, and we just made too many mistakes. I don't care what game you're in, you can't give up goals like that. And, when our mindset is defending first, I mean, we're doing a pretty good job in the sense that we didn't give up a lot, but when you give up the quality we gave on their 3 goals, that's the difference.
Now, there were positives from the game last night, Faith. Kyle Connor had his first power play goal of the season. And how about Dylan Samberg returning to the lineup, coming off of that broken wrist? Samberg was on the ice for 23 minutes. Welcome back. The Jets conclude their road trip tomorrow. They're in Calgary to face the Flames.
All right. Maybe not so impressive for the Jets, but in soccer, an impressive performance by Canada last night.
For sure. Impressive, Faith, since the Canadians played a man down for almost the entire match and yet still managed a scoreless draw against Ecuador. Ali Ahmed got a red card just 6 minutes in for a harsh foul, and I can tell you from being in the crowd, there was a feeling of dread in that moment. Ecuador, they're a quality side, Faith. They have Chelsea's Moises Caicedo, maybe the top midfielder in the English Premiership this season, pulling their strings, and yet Canada held them at bay, not allowing a single shot on goal. Here's Canadian coach Jesse Marsh.
That was a huge step for us in terms of really being an experienced, hard team. It's not like it's our best performance, but it might be one of our most important. We need to tuck this away and understand how to handle really big games and big moments and know that we have a good group, a mature group. And I think this made us more ready for what the biggest games will be like.
It wasn't just the quality of opponent that Canada will experience at the World Cup. It was the type of crowd they're going to experience next summer as well. The Ecuadorians were in full voice, making it feel like a stadium in Quito, not Toronto at times. Although I guess with the near freezing conditions, that might be a stretch. Still, all in all, Faith, an encouraging performance from Marsh's side. And had striker Tani Oluwaseyi not been stymied point blank by Ecuador's keeper at one point, we might have been talking about a Canadian win this morning.
Scott, this Remembrance Day, Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham and I were walking in a Legion parking lot and saw a Rough Riders flag. We both had to convince one another not to do anything to the flag. Of course, it's going to be a busy weekend here. What should we expect?
I think a low-scoring affair, Faith. Montreal and Saskatchewan have the 2 best defenses in the league. The Alouettes do have an electric young quarterback in Davis Alexander, but he's got that hamstring ailment, which could make it tough to scramble and make plays for him. The Riders gave the league's most outstanding player award winner fits in the Western Final, remember, chasing BC's Nathan Rourke all over the field. Saskatchewan hasn't been in a Grey Cup in a dozen years, Faith. The Riders' longest tenured player, long snapper and Saskatoon native Jorgen Hughes, was asked what it means to be part of the game.
Finally got here. Been a long time coming. Been dreaming about this day, obviously, since I was a little kid. Started playing football. To play for your home province means a lot. And then to get to this game just means so much more. We've been trying, for so many years. But, with this group, never felt better about getting to this game. So, hopefully we can just keep it going. And hopefully Sunday is a good day for us.
If so, members of Riders Nation across the country, Faith, will be thrilled, including mascot Gaynor the Gopher, who, for the record, is not a gopher at all. His suit is based on the Richardson's ground squirrel. Menacing creature. So there's a little trivia for you for Sunday. Now all you need is some Montreal poutine, some Saskatoon berry pie, and you're ready to go.
There you have it. All right, Scott, thanks very much.
You bet.
Scott Reguer from your CBC National Sports Desk. I'm Faith Fundal here on Information Radio. More to come after the news.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Josh Crabb in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's mostly cloudy and 6 downtown. There's a snowfall warning in effect for Brochet to Dooley Lake and Churchill. A Winnipeg researcher thinks a ticket-fixing case involving Winnipeg police hints at a broader culture issue within the force. Last week, Winnipeg Police Constable Elston Bostock pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice. He admitted to successfully getting other officers to drop tickets for acquaintances in exchange for gift cards and alcohol. Lawyers are now reviewing past cases Bostock was involved in. Kevin Walby is a criminal justice professor at University of Winnipeg.
The matter deserves some kind of outside independent assessment. I think there's enough here to say there's a leadership and culture problem at WPS that WPS can't be trusted to fix.
Walby echoed a U of M law professor who last week said there should be a public inquiry. Local sex assault survivors hope a federal review of how the courts treat sex assault cases will result in higher conviction rates. Right now, they're among the lowest of all violent crimes. Isabel Daniels is both a survivor and now a trauma counselor. Too often, she says survivors are told to get over it.
How is somebody supposed to go over that when this person could be in their workplace, when this person could be a public figure, when this person is still walking with the freedom and the arrogance of getting away with sexual assault?
The Office of the Federal Ombudsperson for Victims of Crime is expected to release their special report into this issue next week, and more on this story coming up on Information Radio. Winnipeg plans to set aside $500 million to build the final phase of upgrades to its largest sewage treatment plant. Mayor Scott Gillingham says the budget for next year will include this commitment to the North End Water Pollution Control Centre. The final upgrade to the plant will cost $1.5 billion. It involves a facility that removes nutrients like phosphorus from effluent before it's discharged into the Red River. Gillingham says the city has to make the upgrades.
We have limited capacity, only a few years of capacity left, 4 to 6 years of capacity left in the plant, and we need to get the plant built to meet our environmental licensing requirements to protect Lake Winnipeg and the rivers.
The mayor says he's counting on the provincial and federal governments to help the city out. The budget will be presented this afternoon. Flin Flon's 28 firefighters battled wildfires for more than 4 weeks straight earlier this year. Alongside crews from around and outside Manitoba, they kept the city safe while it was evacuated. CBC recently spent time in Flin Flon as part of our Communities in Focus initiative. Captain Darren Romo says one of their most important successes came early on. They stopped a wildfire from traveling south between two lakes into the city. Romo says it meant grueling shifts for days.
You're walking through that bush, and it's thick bush. It's not easy to get through, and you're trudging through there every day for 15 hours average, probably, and up, rock faces. You're carrying hose packs, and you're climbing up rock faces, and the guys just put in a lot of work. It was amazing, honestly. The camaraderie we built.
Romo says he doesn't think of himself as a hero. He was just doing his job. And it was a third period to forget for the Winnipeg Jets last night in Seattle.
Long pass, breakaway, Scheifele alone, scores!
That's Mark Scheifele scoring last night on TSN in the second period to give the Jets a 2-1 lead on the Kraken. Winnipeg took a 3-2 lead into the third, but Eli Tolvanen tied it, and then Jordan Eberle broke the tie and added an empty netter to give Seattle the 5-3 win. Winnipeg ends their road trip in Calgary tomorrow night.
And the CFL's most outstanding rookie is Trey
Vavel! The Winnipeg Blue Bombers rookie Trey Vavel walked away with 2 trophies at the CFL Awards banquet last night. The dynamic return man was named the league's top special teams player, and then a few minutes later he was announced as the CFL's outstanding rookie. The 25-year-old thanked the fans and his teammates, but saved a shout-out for 2 special family members in attendance at the Club Regent Events Center.
My mom, my sister is really all I've really had since I was a kid. I've had friends and other family, but they're really my backbone, and I do everything for them. I haven't been able to see them all year. They been able to come to a game, and them just being here tonight means the world to me, so I love them.
Vavel led the CFL in punt return yardage while returning 2 kickoffs for scores, the most in the league. That is CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local news is at 8:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Josh Crabb from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Malagang Biyernes, happy Friday, Manitoba. Faith Wondal here in for Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Lots to come this half hour of the program. First, though, Abby Adiemi has a look at your forecast.
Yeah, we have snowfall warning in place for Churchill, where we're looking at about 10 to 25 centimeters, which will pile up through the day before it eases on Saturday morning. For the rest of the province, it's going to be mild. We're talking about a mix of sun and clouds across the south. Winnipeg here, 6 degrees, mostly cloudy out there. We're warming up to 12. The Pembina Valley region, we're looking at temperatures warming to about 14 later today. Brandon at 13, heading to 14. Dauphin at 8, heading to 13. Gimli, 4 degrees, high of 12. The Par, we're looking at 12 degrees there, a mix of sun and clouds, high near 5 degrees. And Thompson, having that light freeze and drizzle at this time at -1. You only warm up to 3 degrees. Churchill, mostly cloudy there. Warning, snowfall coming your way. Gusty winds along with that. You see your highs around -1. Winnipeg, 6 degrees.
24 minutes before 7 o'clock, before 8 o'clock, I should say, here on CBC Radio 1. Corey Funk joining us now with a look at the commute. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, so at least right now, no major issues, but I know pretty much throughout the weekend, it's be busy downtown. So there's some road closures I want to let you know about. Let's start with the Grey Cup Festival. So actually right now there is already a closure in place. Eastbound York Avenue is closed right now between Edmonton Street and Carleton Street, and that's all the way till Sunday at 9 a.m. as well. That means Yonge Street, just right outside the CBC building here, closed from Portage Avenue to Ellis until 9 a.m. on Sunday as well. Now, tomorrow is the Santa Claus Parade. It starts at 5 p.m. It's going to start at Portage and Main, run down Portage west, and then turn onto Memorial and end at Portage and St. Mary. But road closures start as early as 11 a.m. and that's going to be on Main Street. Southbound Main Street between Portage Avenue and York is going to be closed starting at 11 a.m. and then at 2 p.m. a bunch more closures. Portage Avenue between Main Street and Memorial will be closed, and then Memorial Avenue northbound from Portage to Broadway, and then Memorial Avenue from southbound between St. Mary and Broadway is going to be closed. But Broadway will remain open throughout the day if you are wondering, and St. Mary Avenue between Vaughan Street and 4th Street will also be open, as well as Main Street northbound will be open as well throughout the day. A lot to take in there, but essentially downtown tomorrow won't be very fun to drive through, essentially. You could just assume that's going to be the case. But if you do see something going on and you want to let me know about it, what's going on right now, give me a call. That number 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, our studio director here on the program. Darren Morash is our streaming producer. And hello to the folks watching us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. We're at 22 minutes before 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. And the performing arts scene here in Winnipeg is lively, but there was a time when that wasn't the case. COVID-19 left theaters empty and left many organizations in a precarious place. But they're getting back on track. Artistic director Kelly Thornton spoke on Information Radio about where the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre is right now.
We realized we'd lost about 3,000 subscribers, so it was a grim time. Obviously that's guaranteed income that we no longer could count on. I said, I think we need to actually grow our way out of this problem. We're going to face into the wind. And so we used our stabilization fund. We made decisions to do a planned deficit season to bounce back, to give the audiences what they know and love about MTC, which is big, bold theater on our stages.
So a grim time to now. Michael Blais is Executive Director of Manitoba Opera, joining us by Zoom. Welcome.
Hi, Faith. Good to be here.
What did you think as you heard Kelly describe what it was back then and where it headed to now?
Yeah, well, she's totally right. It was a bit of a grim time there, for Manitoba Opera when we emerged from the pandemic. If you think of just that 2-year period, we were at about 60% of our pre-pandemic audience base. So we had a lot of room that we needed to grow there over those years. I would say, in last year was the first year that we really saw signs of recovery. And we've got a much more robust response this year. So that's really great to see the community coming back and supporting the organization again.
The way that things have always worked is through subscribers. And I understand that both RMTC and the WSO seeing more single ticket sales. What do you make of that change in habits?
Yeah, well, I think that younger audiences are certainly buying later in the sales cycle than older audiences are. And I think that it's also just, the change in habits that people developed during those pandemic years. And so we are seeing that same thing as well, that there's more single ticket buyers and they're buying closer to the performance date. So it's just one of the emergent challenges that has come out of the pandemic for arts organizations.
Kelly talked about being bold. What's your version in Manitoba Opera of being bold to rebuild that audience?
Yeah, well, we saw when we emerged from the pandemic, we knew that we had to do something big to get people back. And so, we spent a lot of time internally kind of hashing out what some of the things that we could do. But one of the things that we've really done in the last year and a half is been investing in kind of modernizing our business practices. We were recipients of some funding from Prairie's Can, and we've been able to really kind of lean into our social media and our digital marketing, and that's been really, really successful. I was thinking about it the other day that funding was really the first time that, we were the recipients of funding that was not related to the creation of art. It was about investment in our business, and that's a really exciting thing that we're seeing great results from.
And that investment, is the money coming from philanthropists? Is it coming from the public purse? How have you been able to manage all of that?
Yeah, so I mean, in the greater scheme of the organization, it's a combination of all of those things. That big investment that we had from Prairie's Can, of course, is a federal program, so that was public support there. And the investments in the arts are really important for the local economy, and so Manitoba Arts Council just came out with some data a few weeks ago. Where, for every dollar invested at Manitoba Arts Council, organizations that are the recipients of that funding are generating $10 more and putting that back into the local economy. So that's a really wonderful thing to hear about that investment.
Who do you need to convince? Is it subscribers? Is it ticket buyers? Is it the government? Who are you targeting?
Oh, well, it's all of them, to be honest, and I think that's, when we look at the kind of the road ahead for the opera, it's certainly, if we stay on track with our current kind of sales targets, we're going to hit about 85% of our pre-pandemic numbers this year. So we expect to see kind of full recovery in the 26-27 season, which is really great to see. But we do need to see greater public support for the arts, and that investment is beyond economic impact. It's also about an investment in community well-being and personal well-being. A night at the opera or an afternoon at an art gallery or a museum is really food for the soul, and I think it's just really important to keep in mind that. The value of the art sector in that way for the community.
If you were to pick one word about this year's upcoming season, what word would you choose to describe either how you feel or what you're expecting?
Well, it's I'm going to go with busy. It's certainly been a busy season, but it's a really exciting one too. We're our interim artistic director, Larry DeRoche, who previously served as the general director and CEO, will be with us until May of this year. So we're undergoing a national search right now for a permanent artistic director, and I think that's just a really exciting element that's at play this season for the opera, because we just have to keep in mind all those new opportunities and new exciting things that new person will bring to the organization. So that's something I'm looking forward to.
Michael, thank you for the time today, and take good care.
You too. Thank you, Faith. Bye-bye.
Michael Blay, Executive Director of Manitoba Opera. Coming up after 8 o'clock. Whatever that means. The Brothers Landreth are back, and they have a new album fresh off the vinyl press. They're coming live in studio for a special live musical performance. Stay tuned for that coming up in our next half hour of the program. I'm Faith Wendell here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, everywhere on the CBC Listen app and on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Now for the latest on our special report about sexual violence and the justice system. Next week, a specially appointed federal task force will release the results of their investigation into how the courts treat sex assault cases and, more specifically, the survivors at the heart of them. This week, we heard from local survivors who know only too well how traumatic it can be in their efforts to get justice in their cases. Today, a look at the legal obstacles that get in their way and what they think needs to be done about it. CBC producer Donna Carrero has been looking into this issue, and she joins us in studio. Good morning, Donna.
Hi there, Faith. So let's start with what's at stake here. The survivors. The vast majority of sex assault survivors don't get their day in court. We heard about that the other day. Either the accused is acquitted or not charged in the first place. So where does that leave survivors like Jules Pierre Roselli?
I know myself, and I know who I am. And I'm not a liar. I'm not out here saying that this person assaulted me for what? That person sexually assaulted me. That is what happened to me. He did that.
So what's going wrong in this situation is this. First of all, survivors don't have any real say in how a case is going to proceed in court. The first time Jules Pierre Roselli, for example, heard from the Crown Attorney in her case was 5 months after she'd reported the assault, only to be told no charges would be laid. And then there's Isabel Daniels. She's also a survivor. Her case did go to court, but on the day she was scheduled to testify, she was told a deal had been struck and the accused got house arrest. Alexa Barkley is both a survivor and an advocate, and she puts it this way.
They really don't want to hear from you, generally speaking, which I know is a huge frustration for survivors. I mean, we are the ones that have been hurt. We have the greatest amount of skin in the game, quite frankly.
In a court proceeding, the victim is just one witness and is treated so accordingly. But the big issue is proving there was no consent. Here's Jules Pierre Roselli again.
The one question that, one of the officers asked was well, did you say no? And that just implies that the answer is always yes, otherwise, and that's wrong. And really, what are we asking? Did you say no? Well, did I say yes? No, I didn't. I didn't say yes, ever. So why did you ask that?
Donna, what are survivors supposed to make of that? What do advocates say about that?
Well, here's what Alexa Barkley's take is on it.
I think it's because the burden of proof is so high to actually convict somebody. So you need so much evidence about consent, and so they're looking for, easy ways to determine that. Well, did you say no? Well, then obviously if you said no, then you did not consent. But it's just, there's so many scenarios, especially when you slip into that survival mode.
Speaking of the survival mode, those scenarios can range from being too scared to actively fight off their assaulter because they don't want to escalate the situation, or sometimes they just freeze. They're actually unable to physically react. Sometimes they disassociate. All of this, though, Faith, is in an effort to survive it.
I hear that all the time from women who have been sexually assaulted, especially when it happens like date rape, right? And again, people do not understand what it's like to be a woman in a situation with a person that can overpower you. All these things go through your mind, and it's how do I stay alive? And that's what it comes down to.
So that was Isabel Daniels. Now, Karen Bellhumer, she refers to this as the fight, flight, or fawn scenario. She's a former Crown attorney out of Ontario. She now works with sex assault victims. She says the courts just don't fully understand what the brain does during a traumatic event. And without that understanding, it can really be tough to prove in court what lack of consent looks like.
Donna, how can the justice system, as we know it, fix these issues?
Well, first of all, it's really important to note that these are not new issues. So earlier this week, I'd referred to some statistics that reveal the vast majority of sex assaults go unreported, and of those that are reported, the vast majority end up without convictions. This is nothing new. And the justice system has known this for decades. Back in 1991, the Supreme Court of Canada singled out sex assault cases as being particularly problematic. And I'm going to quote, "Sex assault is not like any other crime. It is for the most part unreported. The prosecution and conviction rates for sex assault are amongst the lowest for all violent crimes," end quote. The Supreme Court even then acknowledged the impact on the victims themselves. And I quote again, "Perhaps more than any other crime, the fear and constant reality of sexual assault affects how women conduct their lives and how they define their relationships with the larger society," end quote.
This was back in 1991.
Yeah.
Here we are almost 35 years later.
Yeah.
What have the courts done about it?
So a few things have changed, but importantly, they come with caveats. So let's start with this understanding of consent and what it looks like. In 2021, the Federal Department of Justice passed Bill C-3. So it means that any incoming judge in a provincial superior court must agree to participate in continuing education on matters related to sexual assault law and social context. And that includes the concept of what consent is and isn't. Here's the but. It's for incoming judges only, new ones. And that, says Alexa Bartley, is already proving to be problematic.
But judges who have been practicing already are not required to take that training. It's only new judges. So we're sort of dealing with an uninformed group of people who are making decisions on sexual assault cases that they really have no business making, quite frankly.
What does she mean by that?
Well, it turns out last year, for example, an Ontario Court of Appeal determined that criminal trials don't need expert evidence explaining the neurobiology of trauma because judges and jurors already understand that so-called failure to resist concept that's often wrongly interpreted as consenting. But advocates say recent trial outcomes suggest some judges still don't get that. In one case, the trial judge didn't buy the victim's explanation of why she'd acquiesced to the assault.
Whereas, I'm sitting in the courtroom with a bunch of survivors and survivors advocates, and we're all like, yes, that's exactly what happens. You do that to survive, and she didn't understand it.
What about closer to home, Donna? What is the legal landscape here?
So, as you know, we heard from two Crown attorneys from Manitoba Justice who talked us through the legal challenges yesterday. So first and foremost, there's the non-negotiable. This won't ever change. Some cases just won't make it to court. The victim's telling the truth, but it's not enough to proceed with charges. Chantal Boutin puts it this way.
In order for a case to proceed, of course, we have to ensure that there's a public interest. There almost always is in cases of sexual violence, but also that there is a reasonable likelihood of conviction. And that is the particular aspect that can lead to a matter not proceeding. And that's in light of all the evidence that's available, an assessment of all of that evidence.
So what has changed then?
So training, for starters. Any Crown attorneys who want to work with sex assault cases now have access to sex assault training and a community of experts who can help inform them. And as for the victims themselves, Manitoba Justice offers the option of what they call testimonial aid. So here's how that works. If a victim's under 18, the courts will automatically provide someone, either from community or otherwise, to be with them during testimony. But here's the but. It's automatic, as I said, for those under 18. For adults, the Crown has to request one.
What about other changes that have been made locally?
Remote testimony. So just this year, in fact, the Crown appealed an acquittal of a sex assault where the survivor hadn't been permitted to testify remotely. So they won that appeal, and a new trial has been ordered, and the victim will get to testify from away. This can be important for survivors outside the courts, perhaps, where they can remain within their support network and testify without prejudice.
Speaking of survivors, Donna, are there any other supports being put in place for them?
So here's one big change that advocates are calling for, and most provinces aren't yet on board. It's the idea that sex assault survivors themselves have legal representation in court, just like the accused.
What do you mean?
So Karen Bell-Humer again, she's leading the advocacy on this. She's the former Crown attorney out of Ontario, so she envisions a system where as soon as a survivor presents to authorities, they're offered free legal counsel, a lawyer.
How come?
So they can have a legal advocate who has their back. Now, remember, Crown attorneys are not the victim's lawyers. The victim is one witness in the Crown's case, so they're not privy to any of the behind-the-scenes activity in the case. A lawyer of their own could, at the very least, talk them through the process. But more importantly, Karen Bell-Humer says a lawyer could protect them.
Talk more about that, protect them. What does she mean?
Okay, so for example, as she explains it, anything the victim tells the police or the Crown must be disclosed to the defense. There's no confidentiality in relationship with either, right? Their lawyer might protect them from that. Here's an example she cited. So say a survivor tells police that the PTSD they've suffered since the assault, it's not, for a variety of reasons, evidence that the Crown can necessarily use to prove the assault occurred. But Karen Bell-Humer says it would be available for the defense, and the defense could then turn around and use it in a way to undermine the complainant's credibility. Her lawyer could perhaps guard her against that.
What's been the reaction to this idea?
Depends on whom you ask. Advocates like the idea, defense lawyers are not so much. Next week, the Federal Ombudsman for Victims of Crime is releasing their special report on how the justice system handles sex assault cases. With it will come recommendations on what needs to change. We'll see if this is one of their recommendations.
And Alexa Barkley lent her voice to the task force's research on that report, didn't she?
That's right, and that's why she and Karen Bell-Humer will be watching for those recommendations. In the meantime, Alexa has this message to deliver to other survivors like Isabel Daniels and Jules Pierre Roselli.
So first, I'm just so sorry for what you've experienced. The system is not built for us. Yeah, so I think those are my big two messages. You're not alone. It's not your fault. And the system is super broken.
Thanks for this, Donna.
You're very welcome, Faith, and I really just want to thank all of the survivors who shared their truths with us. Isabel Daniels, Jules Pierre Roselli, Alexa Barkley, others who weren't ready to go on camera with their stories. We can't tell the stories without their truths.
Really appreciate your work on this. Take good care. Donna Carrero, producer with CBC Manitoba. For more on this special report, you can visit our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. We're at 2.5 minutes before 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. And joining us in studio with a look at news headlines, Josh Crabb. Good morning.
Good morning. The city's budget for next year will be presented this afternoon. Winnipeg plans to raise property taxes 3.5%. Mayor Scott Gillingham says the property tax hike will return to the rate it was in 2023 and 2024, his first two budget years as mayor. A Winnipeg researcher thinks a ticket-fixing case involving Winnipeg police hints at a broader culture issue within the force. University of Winnipeg criminal justice professor Kevin Walby echoed a U of M law professor who last week said there should be a public inquiry. And Flin Flon's 28 firefighters are battling wildfires for more than 4 weeks straight earlier this year. CBC recently spent time there as part of our Communities in Focus initiative and spoke with some of the firefighters who helped save the city. Your next local CBC News is at 8:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
That is Josh Crabb from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. I'm Faith Fundal in for Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. Stay tuned because we're going to hear about how one band used their sound to mark a moment in time, like a dog ear in a book. You may even hear a few songs off their new album released just today. We'll hear more about that coming up in our next half hour of Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. And we'll get a full look at your forecast and check in with the commute if you see issues 2047-883093. Stay tuned. World Report is standing by.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger in for Tom Power. In a special episode of Q, you're going to hear Tom in conversation with Mark Critch, Deantha Edmonds, Alan Doyle.
A kid asked me at a gig, I said, how many concerts have you done in your lifetime? And I said, buddy, I don't know.
And many others, recorded live in front of an audience in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, It's The Current with Matt Galloway.
A year ago, CNN host Fareed Zakaria published a book about the history of populist movements, but so much has happened since then that he needed to update it. Fareed Zakaria on Trump, immigration, Canada, and the age of revolution, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. CBC Marketplace is on the hunt for the worst commute in the country. It's been gathering data and doing analysis, and the primary finding, which may not surprise you if you're listening in a car right now, is this. Daily rush hour commutes all across this country are getting longer. Marketplace host Chris Glover has the details.
Ontario's Highway 401 routinely comes to a halt during Michaela Helliwell's 2-hour commute.
We're stopped. All right, so you can have a stretch now, hands off the wheel.
She and hundreds of others responded to a Marketplace call-out, arguing they have Canada's worst commute.
The worst commute has got to be in Edmonton.
Research analyzed by Marketplace shows commutes across the country are getting longer, especially in Montreal, Vancouver, and Toronto, due to construction, population growth, and lack of capacity. Data shows congestion in those cities is up to 5% worse now compared to 2019.
It's inevitable. It has to come.
Civil engineer Beher Abdulhai says adding a fee to key routes would reduce demand during peak hours.
Congestion pricing is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
In January, congestion pricing was set up in New York City.
That's why drivers have suddenly become supporters of congestion pricing.
Jano Lieber runs the program and says on average traffic is moving 20 minutes faster. But in Canada, provincial governments must approve new highway charges. Ontario's Transport Minister Pravmeet Sarkaria says no.
It's something that we just absolutely fundamentally disagree with.
Beyond adding a congestion price, in the past few years, premiers in Ontario, Nova Scotia, and British Columbia removed tolls. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
And that Marketplace investigation airs on CBC TV and CBC Gem tonight at 8:30 in Newfoundland. A stunning surge in the price of baby formula in Canada is forcing desperate parents and caregivers to ask strangers online for help. Statistics Canada finds the average cost of essential infant formula has climbed more than 80% since 2017. The CBC's Jessica Pope has more.
6-month-old Charlotte is still exclusively formula fed. Her mother, Cassandra Shedden, in Thunder Bay in northwestern Ontario, says it costs up to $120 a week to keep her bottle full. And formula prices are straining her already razor-thin budget.
Sometimes you're trying to choose between bills and feeding your kids.
Lisa Irulo helps to run a Facebook group called Everything Free Thunder Bay. She says she is getting direct messages from strangers for help and has sent emergency overnight loans to desperate mothers.
Formula requests are on the rise for sure.
Leslie Frank has been tracking the issue nationally for nearly 2 decades. She is the Canada Research Chair in Food, Health and Social Justice at Acadia University in Nova Scotia. Frank says these social media groups are seeing requests for baby formula across the country.
Foraging for formula online and making pleas of desperation.
Frank says her national research paints a dire picture, with some people even buying open cans of baby formula from strangers online.
Infant formula is now locked up because it's one of the most stolen food products in Canada.
Most of Canada's baby formula comes from a largely consolidated U.S. market. And Frank says there is no incentive for baby formula giants to be competitive or bring down costs. She says increasing the Canada Child Benefit amount would help struggling families or even nationalizing baby formula production. Jessica Pope, CBC News, Sudbury, Ontario.
18 people a day are dying in Canada because, in part, they lack safe alternatives to toxic street drugs to manage substance use disorder. CBC's Fifth Estate has investigated the federal government's response and reveals that Health Canada has ignored their own experts' advice, and instead of expanding access to safe drugs, they cut funding. Stephen D'Souza reports.
Claudia West travels Vancouver's downtown east side in her electric scooter. She makes the trip 3 times a day to the Crosstown Clinic for an injection of pharmaceutical heroin.
It's been keeping me clean for December 9 will be 4 years.
4 years clean?
From street drugs.
Yeah. Before the program, West relied on street drugs to feed her chronic drug dependency.
I was using heroin and fentanyl and the benzos in it.
She's one of 83 people in the program accessing diacetylmorphine, injectable heroin, a program policy expert Jordan Westfall studied.
My hunch was that giving people legal and regulated drugs instead of street drugs would save them. That program proved it. The evidence proved it.
Westfall coined the term safe supply. He advocated for legal and regulated drugs as co-chair of an expert advisory group on safer supply for Health Canada.
Within a year of us sort of launching this term safe supply, I was, talking to the Prime Minister about it.
But despite that interest, new documents obtained by the Fifth Estate show Health Canada ignored the recommendations from that expert group, including advice to expand programs that had been studied, like the one Claudia West is in.
Disappointing, compromised, and just maintaining the status quo of which was thousands of people dying needlessly, preventable deaths.
Health Canada says federal funding for safe supply programs ended in the spring and no new money is coming, something Claudia West hopes will change.
They should open more programs because it has changed my life.
Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, Toronto.
The Fifth Estate's investigation, The War on Safe Drugs, airs tonight at 9 p.m. on CBC Television and GEM, or watch it anytime on YouTube. Russia unleashes a massive overnight attack on Ukraine. That blast in Kyiv, where officials now confirm at least 6 people are dead, dozens of others injured. Officials say most districts of the capital were hit. President Volodymyr Zelensky says 25 locations across the country were targeted by more than 400 drones and 18 missiles. He calls it a calculated attack to cause as much harm as possible to civilians, leaving people without power and water. Russia says its attacks on energy infrastructure are only aimed at the Ukrainian military. Meanwhile, defense officials in Moscow say their forces shot down almost 80 Ukrainian drones overnight. Israel has identified the remains of one of the last hostages held by Hamas. It says the body of 73-year-old Meni Goddard was handed over to the Red Cross yesterday. Tom Perry has more on the solemn handover and the wider peace process from Jerusalem.
A line of 10 or so soldiers and police officers salutes as a white van carrying the remains of one of the last hostages held by Hamas rolls into Israel's National Forensics Institute in Tel Aviv. Israel has identified the body as 73-year-old Meni Goddard. Officials say he and his wife were both murdered in the attacks of October 7, 2023, his body taken to Gaza. Hamas still holds the remains of 3 hostages, 2 Israelis, Ran Givili and Dror Or, and Thai farm worker Sudisak Rintalak. In a statement last night, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed his country's efforts to bring the hostages home would not cease until the last body was returned. The return of the hostages was a key element in the U.S.-brokered ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, but an end to the violence in Gaza is just phase 1. The U.S. is urging the United Nations to back President Donald Trump's wider 20-point peace plan. It requires Hamas to disarm, an international stabilization force to provide security in Gaza, and the formation of a so-called Board of Peace chaired by Trump to oversee a transitional government for the territory. That plan is reportedly facing pushback at the UN from China, Russia, and some Arab countries. Tom Perry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
And finally, music has a new king. Puerto Rican superstar Bad Bunny dominated the Latin Grammy Awards late last night in Las Vegas, taking home 5 trophies, including the coveted Album of the Year for his genre-bending record, Debí Tirar Más Fotos. The win cements his status as a global icon just months before he makes history as the first Latin solo artist to headline the Super Bowl halftime show in February. That's a decision that highlights the immense growth of Latin music, which generated a record $1.4 billion in the U.S. alone last year. It's clear, though, Bad Bunny is here to stay. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Y por un beso de la flaca yo daría lo que fuera. Tú me dices, si adentro o afuera.
Well, again, Bjernes, happy Friday and Grey Cup weekend, Manitoba. Faith Wendell here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Coming up in this last half hour of the program, how one band used its sound to mark a moment in time. And we'll also have a few live in-studio performances from the Brothers Landreth. Stay tuned for that. First, though, do you have strong thoughts, feedback, even criticism about our journalism? CBC Manitoba wants to hear from you. We'll find out how you can be part of our Community Advisory Board. We are accepting applications. Coming up next year on it's Information Radio, not Up to Speed. Information Radio on CBC. I almost did it. I almost got through the show. All right, you did not sleep in. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, on the app and on YouTube. So close. Mostly cloudy, 6 degrees here in downtown Winnipeg. We'll get a full forecast in just a moment. Here first, though, we're joined by Josh Crabb with a look at news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. It's City Budget Day, and Winnipeg plans to raise property taxes 3.5% next year. The hike was higher this year at 5.95%. It's an outcome some called a miracle. The city of Flin Flon is still standing after being surrounded by wildfire earlier this year, and now some of the firefighters who helped save the community are sharing their stories. And a Winnipeg Blue Bomber took home some hardware at last night's CFL Awards. Trey Vavel is the league's top special teams player and the CFL's outstanding rookie. Your next local CBC News is at 8:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Josh Crabb from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Abby Ediemi has a look at your forecast.
A mixed day across the province. Churchill dealing with a big weather story, a snowfall warning and heavy snow building through that part of the province, and that will ease on Saturday morning. While for the rest of the province, it's going to stay much quieter. Mild and partly sunny Friday in the south and cooler breezy conditions up north overall. Skies will slide between sun and clouds, and temperatures feels more like reasonable. Winnipeg right now 6, warming up to 12.
All right, thanks very much. Corey Funk, following the commute this morning?
Yes, so far very smooth right now, but this weekend it's going to be a little bit of a different story downtown. Going to be really fun to be walking downtown, not so much to drive, because it is the Grey Cup Festival all weekend. As well, there's a Santa Claus parade. So I'm going to walk you through a couple closures. Eastbound York Avenue is closed right now between Edmonton Street and Carleton Street all the way till Sunday at 9 a.m. That's for the Grey Cup Festival. And then tomorrow, the Santa Claus parade starts at 5 p.m. It's going to go start at Portage and Main, run west down Portage, turn down Memorial, and end at Memorial and St. Mary. So that means starting at 11 a.m. tomorrow, Main Street southbound is going to be closed between Portage Avenue and York Avenue starting at 11 a.m. And then at 2 p.m., Portage Avenue between Main Street and Memorial is going to close down. And then Memorial Avenue northbound between Portage Avenue and Broadway also closed at 2, and Memorial Avenue southbound between St. Mary and Broadway also closed at 2 p.m. So, and parking is going to be very limited all throughout downtown tomorrow. So you just want to avoid it if you're driving through there, but make your way there if you want to have a good time. So should be fun. Starts at 5 p.m. is the Santa Claus parade. If you see anything going on right now, though, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
14 minutes after 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Now, we cover a lot of issues on this show and on all of our radio shows, whether it's politics, healthcare, crime, even some of the more complicated and divisive social issues of our time. But have you ever listened to one of our interviews or read one of our articles, watched one of our stories, and have feedback, maybe even criticism of our journalism? CBC Manitoba wants to hear from you. We are accepting applications for our CBC Manitoba Community Advisory Board. The deadline right around the corner. Nadia Kidwai is the senior producer of Community Connection, also host of the Weekend Morning Show. Hello.
Hi, Faith.
We've swapped roles.
Confusing all the audiences.
It's very confusing. Okay, we got to talk about the Community Advisory Board. What is it?
So this is a board that's made up of just regular Manitobans from across the province, but we are specifically looking for communities that we want to better reflect and represent in our journalism. So communities from different locations across the province, different political viewpoints, different cultural communities. And the whole goal of this Community Advisory Board is to improve our journalism, right? So they don't have any editorial control, but they are so valuable in providing feedback when it comes to a perspective we may have missed in our story, or a voice we should have included, or an angle that would have really elevated the story. So this is an opportunity for anyone listening who cares about journalism and perhaps is frustrated that their community is not represented the way it should be. It's such a valuable and important tool for us to help us do a better job of reflecting all Manitobans and their viewpoints, which is our mandate.
I've often heard in the public, why didn't you do this story, or why'd you do it that way? And I often say, I can't read your mind, tell us about it. I'm sure you've had experiences like that.
Yeah, and it's not a small thing for someone who feels dismissed or even demonized, but still has the wherewithal and the generosity of spirit to come and share their feedback with you. That is like gold, and we so appreciate it. So this Community Advisory Board is really an opportunity for you to do that.
What's the time commitment?
Great question. So it's a 2-year term, but we try and configure the meetings so it's very flexible. So all our meetings are virtual. We meet only 6 times a year, usually over the lunch hour on a Wednesday. And virtual because we have members from all across the province and we recognise people are usually at work. So it's 6 meetings a year, virtual. You are reimbursed for your time, $75 per meeting. We try and do one in-person meeting so people can meet each other, and we invite them down to CBC. But we really do try and make it as flexible as possible for people to commit.
So here is your chance, because I know people have said, why aren't you doing this, or why did you do it this way? How do folks apply?
So the deadline to apply is next Thursday, November 20th at midnight. There's more information about all of this, and the application is online on our website. That's cbc.ca/Manitoba/community. And this is really for people who are engaged, who are opinionated, but who are really open-minded, because Manitoba is made up of multiple communities with multiple viewpoints. We don't all have to agree. In fact, it's a blessing and a privilege to be able to disagree, but we do it respectfully. So open-mindedness is really a quality that we are screening for. But I really encourage people to apply. We're living in such a polarized, divisive time. This Community Advisory Board is a space where we can have respectful disagreement and really fulfilling dialogue.
Nadia, thanks for this.
Thanks, Faith.
Nadia Kidwai, our senior producer of Community Connections, cbc.ca/Manitoba/community. We're at 17 and a half minutes after 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Well, contentious question for you book lovers. Do you dog-ear the pages? You know, fold the corner of a page, leaving a mark, a reminder to mark that moment. The Brothers Landreth's new album is all about that. Their album Dog Ear officially comes out today. They are live in Studio 11. If you're on YouTube, or if you have YouTube, you can tune into our page there, to our account there, CBC Manitoba. You can see us stream several performances. So let's throw now to Studio 11. Here's the Brothers Landreth with Dog Ear.
Big ocean swells come to swallow you whole. You need a life raft, you need a boat. When the water does rise and it comes down again, I'll be the shore, my friend. Where the shades are drawn and the walls are closing in, when you're holding on, but you're starting to bend. When you know to leave, but you're just not sure when, I'll be the door, my friend. I'll be the door, my friend. Evergreen, whatever that means, I will always be your evergreen. Evergreen. If you get lost in your story again, I'll be the dog ear, my friend. Evergreen, whatever that means, I will always be your
Title track from their new album, Dog Ear, the Brothers Landreth. Live in Studio 11, we have Joey, Dave, and Roman Clark. Welcome. Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Hi, Faith.
It's nice to see all you three in person in real life. Dave, let's talk about Dog Ear here. What's the story of the Lightship?
So the Lightship, we borrowed that. There's a book I was reading with my son Finn called The Lightship, and it's about these old boats that used to go and sit in the harbor in places where it wasn't safe to build. What are those things called?
Lighthouses.
Lighthouses, thank you.
Great.
And they would go and they would set sail into the middle of the harbor, drop an anchor, and they would stay out there for months at a time. And their only job was to just be a landmark for the ships coming in. So they had foghorns and big bright lights, and they would guide all the ships in. And that imagery wound up being a big part of writing this album, that idea of just being a consistent, stable force in the lives of the people you love, and thinking about the people that are that for you. And then the dog ear is also, the title of the track, Dog Ear, is also kind of a bit of a metaphor for that as well.
Was it easy to choose Dog Ear to turn that idea into music?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty good at sort of stepping into our feelings and playing from the heart. So, it came across pretty quickly.
You are performing another song, which is also on this album, Vincent. What's it about?
Vincent is a story we wrote, and it's a made-up character. So Vincent's not a real person. We've changed the names to protect the innocent. But this character is kind of an amalgamation of a bunch of different people that have come through our lives over the years, folks that you love dearly and are maybe struggling to move on. They're stuck in a rut, and it kind of talks about how when you're young, that's really appealing. There's something really exciting about that kind of energy, and as you get older, it gets a little harder to wear as well, and sort of wrestling with loving somebody and also recognizing that you got to let them go.
Live here in Studio 11 at 23 and a half minutes after 8, here's the Brothers Landreth with Vincent.
I saw a plastic flower on the ground today, and I wondered why it had blown my way. Felt like it had more to say, frozen in its perfect way. It reminded me of you, and the way time moves right through you without doing nothing to you. Oh Vincent, when you call me in the morning, I hear the nighttime on you, and I'll stay here on the phone so you don't have to be alone if you don't want it. In the streetlight on the corner where we first met, you were laughing like a banshee bumming cigarettes. I'll always have a light for you like I did then. Tell me, how'd you make it feel like that?
like it all just moved right through you without doing nothing to you. Oh Vincent, when you call me in the morning, hear the nighttime on you, and I'll stay here on the phone so you don't have to be alone if you don't want. The way I care for you, it scares you, yes I know. Your phone's dying, so you got to let me go. And I'm dying, trying not to let you know that I'm dying, trying not to let you go. Oh, Vincent, oh, Vincent, oh, Vincent, yeah, I'm dying, trying not to let you go. Oh, Vincent, yeah, I'm dying, trying not to let you go.
Live from Studio 11, that is the Brothers Landreth with Vincent. Time's going by so fast. Thank you for the three of you for coming in studio. I know you have one more song to play for us. Quick one-sentence explanation. What is Half Moon Eyes about?
About my daughter, my youngest daughter.
That's perfect. I love that.
Sorry, should I give you more?
No, it's perfect.
You were looking for a fast answer, you got it.
I love that answer. We're at 26 and a half minutes after 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Thanks again for coming. Again, live from Studio 11, the Brothers Landreth with Half Moon Eyes.
You and your half moon eyes lying in my arms tonight. No lightning, no thunder could ever steal your wonder. Yeah, you and your half moon eyes. You and your starlight smile, white as the river Nile, like no earthly treasure, it shines on forever. You and your starlight smile. I'd rather have a heart of broken glass than one made out of stone. And I'd rather pick the pieces off the ground than always have to roll. Me and my wanderlust, that's always how I was. Now everywhere I go is on my way back home. You and your half moon I'd rather have a heart of broken glass than one made out of stone. And I'd rather pick the pieces off the ground than always have to roll.
Live from Studio 11, that is the Brothers Landreth with Joey and Dave Landreth and Roman Clark. Their newest album, Dog Ear, is out today. The news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Josh Crabb in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's mostly cloudy, and 6 downtown, there's a snowfall warning in effect for Brochet, Tadouli Lake, and Churchill. Winnipeg fire crews are on Smith Street between York and St. Mary's this morning because of an early morning fire. Crews were called to La Roca Restaurant around 6 this morning. The fire is now out, but crews are still on scene. A ticket-fixing scandal suggests officers may be getting friends out of traffic infractions more often than the public knows. That's according to University of Winnipeg criminal justice professor Kevin Walby. Last week, Winnipeg Police Constable Elston Bostock pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice. He admitted to nearly 24 instances where he tried to get someone he knew out of a ticket. Walby thinks details of the case suggest ticket-fixing could be a systemic issue within the Winnipeg Police Service.
We don't really focus a lot on police corruption in Canada because there's such this idea that police are noble figures. They are these kind of guardians of society. It might be time that we need to look more carefully at police corruption in the WPS specifically.
Constable Bostock still faces criminal drug charges. Winnipeg plans to raise property taxes by 3.5% in 2026. Mayor Scott Gillingham says the property tax hike will return to the rate it was in 2023 and 2024, his first 2 budget years as mayor. The hike was higher this year at 5.95%. The property tax hike for next year will raise about $28 million more for the city. Gillingham says that alone won't balance the budget.
We expect all of our departments to control their costs and come in on budget. And so we continue to make an effort to keep things affordable for Winnipeggers while controlling our costs.
The city's budget for next year will be presented this afternoon. Advocates of sex assault survivors hope a federal report into how the courts treat these cases will lead to better supports and better outcomes for the survivors themselves. Alexa Barkley is with Eve End Violence Everywhere. She says the justice system needs a complete overhaul. Currently, fewer than 6% of victims report the crimes to police, and of those who do, most don't get justice.
The system is so bad that it's hard for me sometimes to be encouraging for survivors. Like, I find it hard to justify, why they would want to engage the criminal justice system.
The Office of the Federal Ombudsperson for Victims of Crime is expected to release their special report into this issue next week. It's an outcome some called a miracle. The city of Flin Flon still stood after being surrounded by wildfire earlier this year. CBC recently spent time in the community as part of our Communities in Focus initiative, and we spoke with some of the firefighters who fought to save the city. The CBC's Rosanna Hempel brings us their stories.
It's something that weighs heavy on me yet.
James Doak is among 28 firefighters from Flin Flon who fought to save their city from wildfires. When he nearly lost his own home, they stepped up too.
About 7 members there who were just dog-tired, dirty, been fighting all day for days, and Chief walked up to them, who's going to help Doak move his things? And they all stood up and they just came and did it. It was pretty amazing.
The day Flin Floners left under a mandatory evacuation order at the end of May, crews were gearing up for one of their most important fights. Fire Chief Jason Curas says they ended up stopping the wildfire from tearing south into the city. He says for more than 4 weeks straight, his crews did grueling shifts without days off.
It was a major milestone in structural firefighters showing what they can do when backs are up against the wall.
It's an event these firefighters say they won't forget, and the community says it won't forget them either. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Flin Flon.
Winnipeg Blue Bombers rookie Trey Vavel has done it again.
And the 2025 most outstanding special team player is, for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Trey Vavel!
The dynamic returner who fired up fans with 2 touchdowns in a game against Toronto earlier this season scored a pair of individual honors last night at the CFL Awards banquet in Winnipeg. First, Vavel was named the league's top special teams player. Then a few minutes later, he was announced as the CFL's outstanding rookie. The 25-year-old thanked his teammates, family, and fans and his favorite donut shop.
These fans in Winnipeg have shown nothing but love when I've been here. First time being in Canada, I felt the love just around the town, like going to Nicolino's and Nicolino taking care of us, going to Tim Hortons, shout out to Tim Hortons. I love the Tim bits out here, so I've been loving Canada since I've been here, yeah.
Vavel led the CFL in punt return yardage while returning 2 kickoffs for scores, the most in the league. That is CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local news is at 9 o'clock.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
That's Josh Crabb from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Corey Funk has a last look at the commute.
Lots of street closures for the Grey Cup Festival and Santa Claus Parade. Eastbound York Avenue between Edmonton Street and Carlton Street closed today until Sunday at 9. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., Main Street southbound closed between Portage and York. And then at 2 p.m., Portage Avenue between Main Street and Memorial as well is going to close, and as well as part of Memorial as well between Portage and Broadway. So have a lot of fun, and the Santa Claus Parade starts tomorrow at 5 p.m.
Duly noted. Abby Adiemi, the weather?
A mixed sky for the Friday. Mild conditions in the south, cooler air up north. We're seeing snowfall coming your way for Churchill, 10 to 25 centimeters. Most of the regions warming up in the south, close to 14 degrees. Up north, we'll see temperatures run between -12 and -3.
All right. And thank you to the folks who helped put our shows together. Our associate producers, Corey Funk, Abby Adiemi, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Ikuma, May McKillop, Marshall Hodgins, Jenna Bedosso, Sofia Peralta Baron, Dylan Longhurst, Chloe Friesen. Our current affairs reporters, Jim Agapito and Shanali Vidal. Our specials producer, Donna Carrero. Hosts, of course, here on our show, Nadia Kidwai, Marjorie Dowhouse, Marcy Marcusa. Our news team, Josh Crabb, Joni Nicolou, Megan Ketchison, Heather Wells, and Darren Bernhardt. And, of course, thank you to our YouTube producer, Darren Morash. Nelly Gonzalez, show producer of our Current Affairs unit. Leif Larson is our senior producer of audio. Mag-ingat po kayo and take good care. I'm Faith Fundal. The Current is standing by. See ya.